KHCX, Indianapolis.
It's Kevin and Query.
I throw, you catch. It's not that hard, okay? All right, get the out of here.
I'm going to talk a lot about drills and fundamentals.
Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it.
On 93.5
Watch it.
and 107.5.
Boom, baby.
The Fan.
Fairly inconsequential to the world of sports, Kevin, but did you happen to notice, I don't know if this happened with you or not, but it was like a version of Frogger this morning getting in here.
Volleyball players?
Well,
Is that
you
what
had
you're
that.
referencing?
There were volleyball. So first off, and I'm saying this somewhat as a public service announcement, I didn't know that Capitol was closed again between 11th and 10th. So I'm just kind of cruising along, and then boom, road closed. So you got to go west over to Senate and then down. It's literally one block.
Yeah.
So you just got to go kind of around one building.
We did get one of those emails yesterday, like downtown traffic map.
Okay.
So I kind of glanced at it. I actually made a stop at the library on the way down here.
Oh, really? Did you pick up a book?
We have some overdue books for Rosie. So just dropped off a few. Got a bit overdue. So, yeah, right there at 42nd and College, right next to the fire station. Great library that we venture to a lot with Rosie. So, brief stop there. And I do want to shout out, this time yesterday, we mentioned the AC issue at the Bowen household. The Love family, John and Chris Love, incredible with their service yesterday. And a special shout out to Ron, the technician. Jake, a very avid listener to the show. This is a dude who loves his job. Loves his job, and I don't try not to make a pun out of that. But he was great, explaining everything to Maddie before he got home, and it does sound like we're going to need a new one, unfortunately. But, yeah, yesterday's weather wasn't too bad to go through that, but thank you to them, and especially to Ron. He was really, really good.
Love-hvac.com is their website, by the way. No surprise there. I've known Chris and John basically my entire life. They're like brothers to me, so I'm glad they were able to help out. If we could get them in here, that'd be great. It's 95 degrees in studio. Mark, is that you?
No, it's not me. I came in, I was, good grief.
I'm thinking to myself, boy, I probably won't have to work out today. Just come 10 o'clock.
What was the thermostat
you know?
in here?
It was in the middle. And I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Who works the overnight that comes in here and turns this into an inferno? Is it a prank?
I don't know.
Now, last night we did windows open because of no AC, or I
it
should
was
say
nice
cracked.
out last night.
And it was. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a, I don't know, is it a fall morning walking to your car today?
It was a little, I mean, it's
mid-50s.
Yeah, a little bit like that. So
it's going to be a fabulous day today, though. Sun splashed, as I always say, and in the low 80s today. Good morning to you. My name is Jake Query. That's Kevin Bowen. Mark Dykton here as well. It's Kevin and Query. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. And in addition to there were also dump trucks downtown and a lot of volleyball players. So, yes, it was kind of crazy getting in here this morning. But there are detours and bumps in the road taking place in a lot of careers of the NBA. John Wall was I totally had forgotten about John Wall. He took a buyout, I guess, with Houston, $43.5 million.
Gosh, boy, that's a nice buyout, right?
On his way to the Clippers. I don't know. I mean, certainly those that cover the NBA regularly would know better than I. But is he still... Do we know what John Wall has left? I mean, he was a nice player before he got hurt and then hasn't played forever.
How old is he, Mark? He's probably right around my age, I would think.
Yeah,
I'm going to say John Wall is, hang on.
I would guess 33.
Okay,
32.
I will guess, I'm going to guess 29 or 30.
Nope, a little higher.
31?
31.
Okay.
He'll be 32 in September.
Jake, I saw a connection. It sounds like he's going to join the Clippers. I believe the trainer of the Clippers used to be with the Wizards. And I think there's been a big kind of physical health issue with John Wall over the past couple seasons. And then Houston has gone this weird transformation from like him and James Harden to how can we sell off everything besides Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon seems to be like the one that Houston hangs on to throughout all this process. The Kyrie Irving opt-out news, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit too fanboy here, not to bring up the future star of the Pacers, but him opting in with the Nets for next season, isn't that a good thing for the Pacers? Doesn't that take a potential point guard off the board as we get into free agency
later in the week?
And I'm just trying to think of
One would think that teams in the market for Kyrie Irving, though, are not necessarily in the market for Malcolm Brogdon.
I get they're not the same exact player, but if you are
your point is well
for
taken.
Some sort of veteran point guard, I don't know, maybe I'm grasping a little bit here, but it really seems like as we get later in the weekend, again, Thursday evening is when free agency begins. The Jalen Brunson domino, he is the most coveted, I think, of all the unrestricted free agents. What happens with him in Dallas? What happens with him in New York? I think if you are a Pacer fan, you want him returning to Dallas. Therefore, the Knicks, who have some younger assets, would be a little bit needy, a little bit desperate, and that would be, I think, music to the Pacers' ears.
Would you like to guess, by the way, John Wall's career earnings?
$212 million.
250.
229. How about the career earnings of Eric Gordon, the aforementioned Eric Gordon? North Central's finest.
180.
And I mean that sincerely.
168.
157. $157 million. Man.
We're in the wrong line of work.
You think?
Well, I think our talent speaks for itself.
I was going to say, I
We're
need to add
probably
like a foot
in the
and a
right
half
line
to
of
my
work,
game.
Mark, for what
Unfortunately.
bring
I'm
to
curious
the
to see
table.
what happens to like the final few years for Eric Gordon in the NBA.
It's really interesting you mentioned that. I was walking yesterday into my gym, and there was a car parked with a Houston Rockets license plate. Kind of random, right? And it made me think about Eric Gordon. I'm like, and I mean this is no disrespect to Eric Gordon, who has obviously been a good player and a good community member and whatever else. I will readily admit that I've always thought he was a little overrated. To me, Eric Gordon is the proverbial NBA, just a guy. He's a nice player. He's just a guy.
I think he can be really helpful to a playoff team.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, I think the problem Eric Gordon ran into or has run into is, again, he's one of those proverbial guys. If he is your centerpiece guy, you're probably not a great team. But if he's like at this point in his career, he would absolutely be a really not. I mean, for example, would you rather have Eric Gordon or Malcolm Brogdon? If you are give me a team that feels like they're trying to make a push to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you need, Jake.
If you're the Cavaliers, although they have obviously good guard play.
Yeah, I would probably say Gordon because you would think that Colin Sexton, if assuming he comes back, Darius Garland are more point guards. I think Gordon can play a little bit better.
Because it's funny, Brogdon is listed by some as a two guard, but I think of him as a point guard.
Right. I think he would prefer to play that, but he had a lot of success in Milwaukee when he was off the ball there. We're going to have Chad Buchanan, GM of the Indiana Pacers, on in the 9 o'clock hour. Again, free agency begins in just over 48 hours. Obviously, a lot of draft talk still with Chad Buchanan to chat about. Kind of a cool, I think, Tyrese Haliburton, Benedict Mathurin story we can get to a little bit later in the show as well. And then, what is it? Is it 8:30, Mark?
Yes.
For Mickey Shuey, for the Indianapolis Business Journal. Jake, he's the one that wrote or broke the news on the Indy 11 buying is it Diamond Park? Is that the official term for that area?
I think that's right. The area.
Diamond.
Listen, I've got. Let me give my. And I'm going to beat a dead horse here. I guess we'll get more into it, though. I'll just simply say this.
Yeah, it is Diamond Park, the area where Indy 11 would like to build their stadium.
I've got reservation about the whole... And again, people think that, because I've been very vociferous about this over the years, when I talk about my opposition to the Indy 11 building a stadium or a stadium being built for them, and I understand it. People think that I'm coming down. I think that soccer fans have an internal defense mechanism where they feel like they always have to take a backseat to other sports. And so whenever I speak that out, people are like, you're just a soccer hater. It really, I promise you, is not that at all. I am a hater at this point of subsidy for sports teams, period. And so therefore, I truly believe, and we'll get more into this later, but I've always felt like with the Indy 11, there might be ulterior motives. I know that they're really popular. I know that, although
based off ownership?
Yes. And I realize that people are going to find that unfair or critical. That's fair. I just thought they were really aggressive from the get-go when they came in. That raised an eyebrow for me, and it kind of falls to me under the category of know your place. And I hate saying that because soccer and listen, I had season tickets. I was an inaugural season ticket holder for the Indy 11. I mean, I went to games. I enjoyed it.
Brickyard Battalion?
I was not in the Brickyard Battalion. I did not wear flags as a scarf and all that. But I get it. I understand it's cool. I mean, it's fun. Matter of fact, I've said before, and I know that this is like really stereotypically generic, I think it would be fabulous. After watching Ted Lasso, I think it would be so fun to live a summer or like a season in England and just pick a team and go to the local pub and watch and cheer. I mean, I think it'd be so cool. So I get it, but we'll get more into my reasoning on that. But it's one of the things that I'm interested in talking with Mickey about as we discuss more this development of a stadium for them.
I did think Mickey had a lot of the finance details within that piece, so I am anxious to hear more about that because there were some things when I read it initially, I was kind of like, oh, wow, this doesn't seem like it's going to be super, super eating at our tax dollars, which, again, Jake, I totally agree. It's a very fair question to ask, especially when, I don't know if misled's the right word, but it kind of felt like when Lucas Oil Stadium was built, I kind of assumed that was the multi-purpose.
It's 100% misled.
Sort of venue
Kevin,
there.
Now you've opened a can of worms here. Let me just tell you this real quick. University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. What's the technical name? Is it AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play? Jerry World?
Yeah, I think that's right.
MetLife Stadium in New York City. Those were, I believe, the next three stadiums built after Lucas Oil Stadium. The tax dollars of those three stadiums, so the tax dollars pumped into University of Phoenix Stadium, the tax dollar pumped into AT&T Stadium, a.k.a. Jerry World, and the tax dollars pumped into MetLife Stadium, which is the Jets and the Giants. Television markets like 11, 6, and 1. The tax dollars of those stadiums combined about 55% of what was paid for Lucas Oil Stadium in tax dollars.
That's pretty jarring.
In television market 26. In addition to that, and I love the Colts and their place in this city, and this city the Colts are a huge part of this city, no question about it. They've got a philanthropic owner, no question about it. But 40% of every dollar generated at Lucas Oil Stadium, non-football revenue, right back to the Colts. The profit margin for the Capital Improvement Board or whoever is running Lucas Oil Stadium does not exist because any profit they would be taking goes right back to West 56th Street. Kudos to the Colts for that, but it's a horrible civic deal. Literally the worst civic deal in professional sports in America. So for that reason, it's like when I was like 26 years old, and my dad's like, look, man, what are we doing here? What do you mean? He goes, you got a speeding ticket and I paid it for you or whatever. Like you're well past the point of coming here to the well. It's dry. It's done. It's over. You're on your own. And that's how I feel about pro sports and subsidy.
Yeah, we'll let Mickey clarify it. Again, when I first read it, I felt like the tax impact wasn't going to be at the level that I assumed when I first started reading the article. Some district taxes, I believe, was kind of a big part of it. And I do think that's an area of downtown that we've always been curious about if and when they would develop. So that'll be something to talk more about in the 8 o'clock hour. Wimbledon going on behind you, Jake. We ran into our market manager in the hallway, Taja Graham, a few days ago. She is very excited about Wimbledon. Coco Gauff, I believe, her favorite there. Is Wimbledon on the bucket list for you? One day?
Let me tell you something. It's funny that you mentioned the Love brothers, Chris and John Love. So I grew up in Washington Township, and tennis is a huge part of the culture of North Central and Washington Township. I also grew up in kind of a golden era for tennis because...
For American tennis or Indiana tennis?
American tennis, because when in my early years, I mean, I don't remember like Billie Jean King and the Battle of the Sexes and those things, but I saw kind of the passing of the torch between Connors and McEnroe into Yvonne Lindell, Boris Becker, Michael Chang. I don't really remember Bjorn Borg much, but and then on the women's side, I mean, Martina Navratilova, Chris Everett, into Jennifer Capriati. I mean, there were so many American household names in tennis. It was very similar, Kevin, to be honest with you, probably the trajectory as the Indianapolis 500. In terms of when I was a kid in my childhood, and I think people that are listening right now in their, let's say, mid-40s and above are nodding their head going, yep, absolutely. When I was a kid, the Masters, the Indianapolis 500, Wimbledon, those were 3 events, and in the Kentucky Derby, those 4 events were events that people, when they sat to the dinner table, and yeah, they still did that back then, regardless of where they lived, would say, so who won Wimbledon today? I mean, it was a topic of discussion everywhere. Like, I remember Chris and John Love and I going to his grandparents' house in Evansville in 86 or 87 and watching Pat Cash and Yvonne Lindell in the Wimbledon final and getting up for it around the 4th of July. It was a massive deal. So nostalgically speaking, yes, it would be fabulous to me to go see it because it was literally probably the Tiger Woods aspect of golf. So if you think for you guys like the watching of the Masters or the PGA when you were in high school or college, that's what Wimbledon and the U.S. Open were for my era.
That big?
Of like in middle school and high school, absolutely. It was huge.
You think Nadal and Djokovic and Federer have that pull, or because they're foreigners?
No, I think because they are foreign. I think a big part of it does have to do with there just isn't that. I mean, and granted, now Jake, you're contradicting yourself because the greatest female tennis player of all time is American, and Serena Williams. But Serena Williams had really no, like the Chris Everett, Martina Navratilova. It was kind of good versus evil, right? I mean, you had. During the height of the Cold War, and here's somebody that's from the Eastern Bloc, and here's like this pretty American girl, and then the other one that was like this masculine, evil, even though she wasn't. I mean, obviously Martina Navratilova is a wonderful person, but there was such a clear rivalry, and then the same taking place with, Boris Becker, and then you had the passing of the torch from Connor and McEnroe, which were good versus evil. There were personalities, you know what I mean? I think personalities have such a big thing to do with it. Serena Williams is an unbelievable talent, but she is without peer. I mean, there's no question. And then from the guy's side, Andy Roddick was thought to be this next big thing, and he was a great player, but he never ascended to that level. You know what I mean?
Probably in the
I
wrong
used
era.
to love. Have you ever gone and watched like? Did you ever go to the hard courts?
No, and that, honestly, if I were going to put a tennis kind of bucket list item, I would love to go to the U.S. Open.
I think that would be fabulous, yes.
But, Jake, I'm pretty specific in like the type of match I want to see. I'd want to see a night match, and I'd want to see an American male, probably in the Elite Eight, Final Four, whatever you call it. Because we've seen Serena and Venus make those runs. We've seen Coco Gauff, Sloane Stephens, other American women, kind of closer to my generation, make those runs. Roddick at Wimbledon, what was that, like a decade ago maybe he got to the final? Was it over a decade ago?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, that's it for me.
It's been that long
in terms
ago.
of, sure, Agassi and Sampras are kind of on the fringes of it, but that, if I had to go kind of tennis, I'd probably go there before Wimbledon.
I'll tell you what, if you go, my buddy Marcus Bockel goes.
I'd probably like to see Wimbledon, though.
He goes to U.S. Open every year. Wimbledon would be great.
Just kind of tour it.
I really do think that one of the most underrated things in sports, I believe, like I used to go, my mom and I would go to the clay courts back when it was then before the hard courts out here at the Indianapolis Tennis Center. And if you sit down low at a high-level tennis match, it is captivating. I mean, it is mesmerizing. Going to the U.S. Open and being at Arthur Ashe Court. Now, I've had people tell me that if you go to the U.S. Open, and Marcus has told me this about like tournaments he's gone to in Cincinnati, walking around to the warm-up courts and the smaller courts is actually almost more fun because it's more intimate. But you get at that center court and you watch it at a high level, and it is literally, it is mesmerizing. It's the best way I can describe it. You're just watching it. You're like, holy cow. I mean, the hand-eye coordination.
Oh, it's like the old, could I hit a major league fastball? Could I hit a serve? Men or women.
So, like I said, at North Central Tennis was a big deal, right? one of the guys I grew up with he played at Indiana, and he was a state champion at North Central, Eric Barrett. He had tennis courts in his backyard. And Eric was an unbelievable player. I mean, the best high school player in the state. So one day, we were probably freshmen in high school. I'm like, Eric, I just want to see if I can return one of your serves. Just one of your serves. And they had one basketball goal on one end of the tennis court. Eric Barrett hit me a serve. I had no idea what I was doing and just swung. Somehow I hit like the corner of the racket. The ball went like probably 70 feet in the air, straight up, straight down, and then hung the basketball net, went through the net, hung the net. I dropped the tennis racket. I'm like, that's it. I'm out. That's the only time I've ever tried to return a serve. But the hand-eye coordination that goes into that is, I can't imagine, for those guys and gals, it's unbelievable.
Speaking of Indiana, we saw yesterday announced the Big Ten, Big East Gavitt games for this coming season. Purdue will be hosting Marquette, Butler at Penn State, Indiana at Xavier. Obviously, the Miller connection there with Sean Miller now being back at Xavier. I know this was kind of outside of Indiana's control with the Gavitt games, but just what a step up in competition this year from a non-conference schedule for Mike Woodson.
You're not kidding.
I think a lot of credit. Again, I know, this is not part of necessarily IU's own doing. The Gavitt games is part of more of a contractual thing. We saw IU host St. John's last year. Now they go on the road this year at Xavier. But just a lot of credit to Mike Woodson for evolving in 1 year with his non-conference schedule. At Kansas, you'll have this game at Xavier, North Carolina in the Big Ten Challenge, or ACC Challenge, I should say, and then Arizona on a neutral floor. So Arizona neutral floor at Kansas, coupled with Xavier and North Carolina. You'd be hard-pressed to find a non-conference schedule more difficult than that. And I think it's important because, A, you want to test a team that you feel like is one of the better ones in college basketball, and B, the Big Ten I don't think is going to be at the level that maybe it was this past season. So I think making sure your non-conference is pretty staunch.
So far, Mike Woodson he is fulfilling his campaign promises, right? He is increasing their recruiting profile, and he is increasing the depth of their schedule, converting it into consistent, competitive, championship-level wins is the next thing on the checklist.
And again, I think you want to see involvement from him as a head coach. Last year, the non-conference schedule was laughable. It almost cost him a trip to the NCAA tournament. Was probably the one reason why they hung around the bubble for so long there late into March. Now this year, bringing back, of course, a large chunk of what they had last season, that plays into it. But it is a loaded non-conference schedule for Indiana. We'll talk Pacers. We'll talk Colts. Again, Mickey Shuey more on the Indy 11 Stadium proposal in the 8 o'clock hour. Chad Buchanan, GM from the Pacers, in the 9 o'clock hour. It is another beautiful Tuesday morning in Indianapolis. Kevin and Query, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
2022 NBA Draft.
The Pacers will really have a new look now.
The Indiana Pacers now on the clock.
With the 6th pick, the Indiana Pacers select Benedict Mathurin.
Giving it up. Oh! And the hammer from Mathurin.
What happens next?
Benedict Mathurin
happens here.
I love his style of play and what he can bring.
Your home for Pacers basketball. 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
IMI concrete delivery drivers make an average of $65,000 per year. Explore a rewarding career with exceptional benefits at driveimi.com/Indiana.
The Mower Shop in Fishers proudly offers Spartan mowers built in the United States for the strongest lineup in America. Spartan mowers at themowershop.com. 317-849-9500.
O'Reilly. If your vehicle squeals or grinds when you slow down or just isn't stopping like it used to, you may need new brake rotors and pads. Now through June 28th at O'Reilly Auto Parts, get 15% off a set of Brake Best Select or Import Direct brake pads and 2 rotors. Restore safe braking and save money now at O'Reilly Auto Parts or order online at O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
This is for the men who never settle, the ones who believe only quitters end a game in a tie, the type of guys who choose the bar with the biggest TVs to overcompensate for theirs at home. This is the Lodge mentality. This is Twin Peaks.
No one does happy hour like Twin Peaks. Whatever your preference, they have everything from tequila cocktails and an extensive bourbon category to top shelf spirits and cocktails served over ice balls. And don't forget about their 29-degree man-sized drafts. Twin Peaks. Eats, drinks, scenic views.
NASCAR and
IndyCar action return for Brickyard Weekend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Saturday, July 30th, catch a doubleheader featuring the NTT IndyCar Series Gallagher Grand Prix, followed by the NASCAR Xfinity Series Pennzoil 150. Then Sunday, the 31st, the NASCAR Cup Series Verizon 200 at the Brickyard. Experience the roar and power of NASCAR and the speed and precision of IndyCar in one exciting family-friendly race weekend. Kids 15 and under get in free. Get your tickets now at ims.com.
Here's what's happening with the Fan. Summer is here, and the Ride with JMB is ready to come and hang out at your house for a backyard broadcast. Head to 1075thefan.com and register for a chance to have JMB do his show live from your backyard July 1st. Think you have the best sports trivia knowledge? Listen to Kevin and Query weekdays 7 to 10 a.m. and call into the pop quiz for your chance to win a Jiffy Lube prize pack.
For more info, click on 1075thefan.com.
The Morning Checkdown. Brought to you by QC Kinetics. Relieving your joint pain at QCkinetics.com. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Major League Baseball yesterday, St. Louis Cardinals blanking the Miami Marlins 9-0. Kevin Bowen, my challenge for you, or Mark Dykton, either one, and I will readily admit that I am not challenging you because I feel superior, because you guys would know this better than I. How many Miami Marlins can you name? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot, admittedly. My apologies.
I would probably say none.
Mark?
Jazz Chisholm. I know that one.
Excuse me?
Jazz Chisholm.
Okay.
What?
Yeah. That's a guy. It's a real person.
Sounds like a club in Greenwich Village.
I'm trying to think of some other ones. I know if I looked at the roster, I'd be like, oh, yeah, that guy's on there, but that's the first one that comes to mind.
Is Levon Hernandez still there?
Does Edgar Renteria have a son that plays for the Marlins?
Edgar Renteria, by the way, my favorite quote of all time, Kevin. Thank you for mentioning that. 2000, St. Louis Cardinals win the division. Edgar Renteria is in the clubhouse. I was covering the Cardinals at the time. On a cell phone, celebrating, speaking fluent English. I walk up and I said, wait a minute, man. I thought you don't speak English. He looked right at me and said, to you guys, I don't.
Oh, yeah, former Indianapolis Indian Jacob Stallings, former Pirate as well.
Oh, yeah.
He's over there.
I do know that name.
Okay.
Kind of
Joey Wendell.
A quiet day in Major League Baseball yesterday. You did have 12 names suspended from that Angels-Mariners brawl. Phil Nevin, the interim manager for the Angels, he gets 10 games. Jesse Winker, along with the pizza, he got 7 games.
Really?
On that one.
Plenty of time to eat pizza, right?
Right.
Okay.
I love pizza.
Oh, we got that.
I can eat pizza every single day. You say you want pizza? Sure.
Yeah.
Even if I just ate some for lunch.
Indiana Fever last night, losing at Phoenix 83-71. Fever now 5-15 on the season.
Tomorrow we will get an announcement on the Colts training camp schedule. I know a lot of people enjoy planning a day or two around Grand Park. We should be up there broadcasting from Westfield as the Colts, I think it's year 4 or 5 from Grand Park and Westfield. So we'll share that with you tomorrow afternoon. Training camp will be announced. Report day is less than a month away, July 26th. I would assume their first practice would be the next day, July 27th, which I think is a Wednesday. And just a reminder, free, open to the public as well, which is not something you typically see around the NFL. So pretty cool that the Colts continue to go off-site for training camp and have it free to the public.
You waited till day 20 here at Grand Park to whip that out.
Okay. Do we have any other sports to get to?
We'll look ahead to Thursday, Jake. Free agency for the NBA, 6 o'clock. That's when it begins there. Again, not a ton of household names. The Pacers are in a pretty favorable cap situation. Some stuff we can talk about with Chad Buchanan in the 9 o'clock hour. Then next week is when they head out to Vegas for Summer League.
Do people put Adrian Wojnarowski's Twitter account as like an alert setting on their phone more for draft day or opening day of free agency?
Well, I believe, if I saw that correctly, I think Shams outperformed him on draft night.
Really? Well,
I don't think it was very close. I think Shams was like 19-11 predicting the picks.
And, well, yeah, because what would Woj say? Like they're focusing in or something like that?
Yeah, he would use pretty
but he got
synonym-y words.
Woj got beat pretty bad on that. Remember that tweet he sent about the top 3?
Mm-hmm.
Jabari Smith going number one overall, and then, of course,
he probably cost some people some serious money.
I would think.
Oh, yeah, Jabari Smith, I think we looked, was minus 6,000 after that tweet. We know how that worked out.
Falls number 3. Yeah, Woj and Shams all over it this week. Again, free agency Thursday night. And we'll see if there are any more dominoes with the Nets. I know Kyrie Irving is opted in. Does that mean he's definitely a Net for next season? We'll have to see how that plays out. We'll talk some Pacers, talk some Colts here coming up. Kevin and Query, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Cardinals, Phillies, Sunday Night Baseball. The coverage begins at 6 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Indy 11 is celebrating Independence Day Saturday, July 2nd with downtown's only fireworks show that night after their 7:30 match versus Miami FC at Carroll Stadium. Presented by IBEW Local 481. It'll be great family fun with tickets starting at just $15. Come early for live music by Cam Cole from Apple TV's Ted Lasso show. Get $11 meal deals and $4 Heineken. Then stay late for a fireworks show synced to a soundtrack curated by JMV's Takeover program on B105.7. Get tickets and details at Indy11.com.
Hey, JMV and fellas, need an annual health exam? I recommend going to Low T Center to get your complete health assessment. They will check all of your levels, not just your T level. In most cases, it's completely covered by your health insurance, and if you don't have insurance, it's less than $100 for a full lab panel and an office visit with their medical provider to give you a complete health assessment. Low T Center specializes in men's health care. Go to lowtcenter.com now to book online. That's Low T Center, reinventing men's health care.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kelly with thehomeloanexpert.com. The housing market has started to cool, but inventory is still low and homes are selling fast. We need to get you pre-approved today. The Home Loan Expert has lower rates, loan programs for almost everyone, and a 10-day closing guarantee. We can answer all your questions and make sure you're ready to close the deal when that perfect home hits the market. The 10-day closing guarantee, only available at thehomeloanexpert.com. The Home Loan Expert LLC, NMLS number 1326241.
You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Chad Buchanan, Pacers GM, is going to join us here a little bit later, around 9 o'clock. Jake saw mentioned yesterday, and I don't know, maybe it was Tyrese Haliburton or Benedict Mathurin, one of the two, posted it on social media, a picture from Mathurin's hotel room on Wednesday night before the draft.
Holiday Inn Express. I hope he stayed there, right?
I believe it was a little bit nicer. I think Weston, I believe, in New York City. But last week, the night before the draft, Haliburton in Mathurin's room stating to him, I think Mathurin probably pitching to Tyrese in a joking way, tell Coach Rick Carlisle that I want to play in Indiana. Haliburton was in New York City for, I think it was an NFT thing. Haliburton's really into those, and he also spoke to the rookies in the green room as well. But clearly, Jake, there's a relationship there with Tyrese Haliburton and Benedict Mathurin. Not extensive, but when Mathurin came here to work out a few weeks back, Haliburton was there, watched that workout. And I remember going back to the trade the Pacers made. Sabonis, Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb, and Haliburton coming back in return. And I felt like one of my first kind of main thoughts on that trade, once you started to, read and listen a little bit more about Haliburton, is he seems to be a guy, and again, money and fame can change a lot of it, but he seems to be a guy that is wired how you need him to be wired to want to stay here long term. And I think what you saw with him and Mathurin is another step in that, of two guys, Jake, that I feel like could very well want to grow together, build together, and we'll see what happens, but have the opportunity to be Pacers for quite some time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And
it's huge.
Here's the... I do feel like with the Pacers and the market that they're playing in, that some of that is a created disadvantage by fans. So in other words, I think that there is an inherent, like almost a defense mechanism amongst Pacer fans of, we're just at a disadvantage because it's Indianapolis and we're never going to win here. And, it's like being a Cubs fan for so many years of just like, it's never going to happen for us. It's just never going to happen. And I get that. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. There are challenges for Indiana that do not exist for the Lakers or the Heat or, clearly, right?
Well, when you see what's happened with Paul and Victor.
Exactly.
It's hard not to.
No question. However, there are ways that you can try to overcome that. And the first being, when they built the St. Vincent Center across from the field house, and it's connected underneath by walkway, like really nice tunnels. When I say tunnels, I don't mean like the kind you see at Methodist Hospital. I mean like nice walkways. And I've gone through that facility, and it is a state-of-the-art. Now, the unfortunate thing is you're always keeping up with the Joneses, and these things are constantly evolving, and it's hard to, it's like having an iPhone, right? Yeah. I mean, you can have the latest one for like 6 months.
College football strength and indoor facilities.
Correct. Yeah. But the Pacers have a state-of-the-art facility, and when they built that, I think part of that was, let's build this to entice free agents to want to come to Indiana. The other thing that you have to have is, it's the most overused word in sports, but a culture, a winning environment that players feel like gives them an opportunity. The Pacers have shown that in the past, maybe not in the immediate past, but what you have now are guys in the NBA that were probably high school or coming-of-age impressionable players when the Pacers were playing and battling LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals and et cetera. So they know that it does exist, but that's getting further and further in the rearview mirror, admittedly. So if you really look at the teams in the NBA that have been able to develop sustained competitiveness or greatness, I mean, San Antonio, that was about Greg Popovich finding the right guys. And, San Antonio is not a lifestyle market. Certainly, it helps that in San Antonio, you can drive to the arena in January without having to scrape your windshield, admittedly. But look at Milwaukee. Milwaukee's not a lifestyle market, and here they are, but that's because they were able to, Kevin, to your point, get a guy like Giannis to build around that was completely almost unaware of like the AAU culture and the lifestyle culture of the NBA. And he re-signed. I mean, that was a coup for them to get him to re-sign his second contract in Milwaukee itself. So it is true that the one thing that the Pacers have going against them is certainly the one thing they can't control, and that's lifestyle market. If you build a roster and a team that, if you get Benedict Mathurin, and he is so far not one that falls into the trap of like, I've got to be in the big market LA glitz and glamour Jimmy Kimmel lifestyle. You've got to now be able to take advantage of his naivete towards that type of thing in building. You have about a 3-year window here to build a team that is then competitive and winning, has a sustained winning culture enough that then he doesn't want to leave. And what's interesting is Paul George did have that here and still wanted to leave. So that's where the balancing act takes place of, look, we tried to build a winning culture for Paul George, and he still wanted to leave. We had a winning team with Victor Oladipo, and he still wanted to leave. But you got to just keep reshuffling the deck and hoping that you get the aces. I mean, that's all you can do.
I think, Jake, honestly, before your practice facility, whatever sort of amenities around a player, the heartbeat of it all comes down to the draft. And it's why I feel like you have to evaluate in these markets drafts at a higher rate because they matter more. You're not in a market where you're going to attract a whole lot in free agency. So the drafts and how well you build through that matters a whole lot more here. You brought up San Antonio. I mean, if you want to go back to that group, they drafted all of them. Ginobili, Parker, Duncan. Let's just start there. Kawhi obviously traded for on draft night. But look at deeper into that. I mean, 3 international guys. I know Duncan played college basketball here. But again, you feel like he's wired in a way
Correct.
That is
That's
a
exactly
little bit
right,
more in your mindset that you're looking for. And if you look at the Pacers right now, again, Ginobili, Parker, who knows how people were reacting to them on draft night. Obviously, Ginobili wasn't even a first-round pick. I don't think Parker was taken that high. Parker was taken one spot behind Jamal Tinsley. Boy, there's some nice salt in the wounds on a Tuesday morning. Chris Duarte played baseball for a large chunk of his life growing up. Dominican Republic, junior college, then to Oregon. Tyrese Haliburton, playing for the Wisconsin, Cheese Curds or whatever his AAU team was. Goes to Iowa State. Wasn't even really a heralded recruit at Iowa State. And then kind of evolved into their lead guy. And then Benedict Mathurin, from the Montreal days to the tragic events off the court with his brother. His dad's never in his life. He's got to go to Mexico City for the NBA Academy. And now all of a sudden he's had this maturation in college of a kind of a 2-year growth period. This is kind of the off-the-court makeup that you want. Again, a whole lot's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years that will change things. And you could point to stuff with Victor Oladipo and Paul George that probably made you think that there was an opportunity here. But these three guys growing together, I don't think Paul and Victor... Victor was, 5 years in the NBA before he came here. That's a lot of other people molding clay that influences Victor. Paul George still had a little bit glitz glamour life that he wasn't growing up with Mathurin, Duarte, Haliburton, where all three of these guys contractually, a little bit age as well, can now grow together. And it adds to the point, Jake, where, and I know I said this last Tuesday, I'll say it again, when we get to next week, I don't want to see Malcolm Brogdon on this team because I don't want someone stunting playing time for a young trio that I think it's so important to let them grow together, because if they have success together, then I think there's a better opportunity for them to see that, experience it, feel it, and a la San Antonio, a la Steph and Klay Thompson, there's an opportunity there where these guys could say to themselves, hey, we got something pretty good here. Let's ride this into a second contract. I'm telling you, the guy that we're going to see, we've now been doing this show together for how long? We are at month 7, is that right? Closing in on month 8. I was going to say crazy, 9. Isn't it? Is that too? November to, Mark, you're the mathematician here. November to July is what, 8 months? Sure. A lot of conviction there from Mark. So we're going to see how well we know one another with this statement. And I realize, and it is a weakness of mine, and for that I apologize, that I often resort back to, for the Pacers and the Colts, I talk a lot about mid-'90s teams, and I realize those are ancient history to a lot of our listeners. But I kind of do it because you guys, between the two of us, we can kind of cover the two eras. But the guy, I remember when the Pacers broke through in those mid-'90s teams, and one of the key players that became a fan favorite, which was one that for the first couple of years he was in the league, like no one even knew about because he went overseas actually, and after he was drafted, and then came back and all of a sudden just started getting minutes. It's like, this guy can play, was Antonio Davis. And Antonio Davis, by the end of it, was a key part of what they were doing. The teams with Paul George, a key part of it, that just all of a sudden it wasn't a huge deal when they acquired him, but then David West became, I think you're the one that likes David West a lot, right? Just the adult in the room, and like, man, a key part of what they were doing. The guy on the roster right now that I truly believe in 3 years is going to be that guy and is going to be a fan favorite, that is going to be a key part of whatever run the Pacers are making, not named Haliburton and Mathurin, that it's like, man, that guy is truly a centerpiece for what they're like. Everything's kind of mixing off of what he can do. Who am I talking about? You're talking about Isaiah Jackson. Bingo. I'm telling you, I am. He almost feels like a sign and stash guy. Like they drafted him. People forget. I mean, they moved back into the first round to get him, and he didn't play significant minutes necessarily last year. But when he did, I mean, I thought he was. I watching him play. I loved his energy. I loved his athleticism. I think he is going to be a main piece
Now, he is one, though, from Michigan, so from the within the region, 20 years old, athletic as hell. I'm telling you, I think he's going to be an outstanding player. But he was what we're talking about, though, the 5-star AAU.
And it's not going to be perfect.
Does he stick? We'll see, right?
It's not like you can. The Pacers are not in a situation necessarily where they can say, okay, that pool of prospects we have to ignore because of their background.
No, I totally get it.
There are good apples in that pool as well. You look at Kendall Brown, their second-round pick out of Baylor. 5-star kid, all of that. Sometimes that's what the second round's about. You have to take chances on that. Quote that Kendall Brown had, we haven't talked a whole lot about him. Again, Benedict Mathurin, 6 overall. The second-round picks, Andrew Nembhard out of Gonzaga, and then Kendall Brown out of Baylor. One thing I like about Brown, we had Alex Golden on yesterday, and he's mentioned before he thinks Brown is the steal of the draft. Something that I felt like Brown has said that I think is necessary when you are building and you aren't the most prominent piece, and maybe Scott Drew said this yesterday. Scott Drew was on with Dan as well. He can impact the game without the ball in his hands. And I think that is very important moving forward. You guys have heard me say this a lot. The Pacers are just not an overly athletic team. And Kendall Brown, I think, provides some of that. Extremely raw on offense. His jump shot, while the numbers look halfway decent, it needs a lot of work there. But from an athleticism standpoint, from a cutting off the ball standpoint, he can finish at the rim at a really high level, I think, right away. And with Tyrese Haliburton's vision, Andrew Nembhard kind of thinking to play ahead as well, I think those pieces, the ability to switch 1 through 5, that's another thing that you hear with him as well. Those are things that you need because as much as it is about obviously building a big core, you need some of those, fringe guys as well, the Boris Diaws of the Spurs, right, if you will, that help you out in those areas.
He played here, didn't he, Boris Diaw? Am I wrong in that? Oh, I'm thinking of Leandro Barbosa. He played here, right? I think
so, yeah. Boy, you talk about a guy that never saw a shot he didn't like. Mr. Barbosa.
Wasn't that...
He was neon green light.
He's the late Leandro Barbosa, right?
Really?
What?
Yeah, I believe that's correct, right?
Jeez.
Wasn't he... am I wrong in this?
He is very much alive.
Okay, who am I thinking of? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of... Was it Rasul Butler? Another one that I think of in that same category?
Just
look up Rasul Butler.
Like you're wishing death on these people.
Look up...
Rasul Butler died in 2018.
In a car crash, right? He was doing like 105 miles an hour. See these...
I don't know.
These like fringe swing forward guys, I get them all confused, I guess.
High speed crash. Well, that was a fun road to go down.
Chad Buchanan going to join us in the 9 o'clock hour. We'll probably stay away from some of those topics with Chad. Jake, am I still getting hate mail for my Lance Stevenson take yesterday?
You're done with Lance, right?
I'm done with him. Do people really buy tickets for Lance Stevenson if he's not playing? Like, people are like, you got to bring Lance back. People buy tickets because he's on the team. I'm like, is that a thing? If he's like the 12th man?
It's a good question. Yeah, probably. I will tell you, man, I
just don't want to see him taking minutes from guys that matter.
I saw when I'd be at games and he would check in, man, people would go crazy.
Right, and again, when he's on the floor on a 25-win team or however many wins the Pacers had last season, sure, that's fine. But now you have like actual young guards that you have serious investments in. They need to play moving forward. I'm just not in the Lance needs to be your 7th man.
Let me ask you a question that I asked last night on Twitter. Because it's fascinating to me the answers that people give, because oftentimes I'm forgetting some and then I'm like, oh wow, that's like, I thought there was a clear-cut answer on this question. I thought there was a clear, definitive, no question about it, knee-jerk, that's the correct answer, right? If counting the as a word What is the greatest one-word named band of all time? Now, the number of people that replied and were like, well, it's the Beatles. No. I just said if the counts as a word, the Beatles then is 2 words, right? Mm-hmm. 2 things I didn't know. Number one, I did not know. Mark Dykton, let me ask you, who sings Hotel California?
The Eagles.
That's what I always thought. It's just Eagles. Did you know that?
No.
There's no the in it. It's just Eagles.
Was that the most popular?
Well, I think
I would go with Queen.
I think very few people knew that it's just Eagles. And based on that, Eagles is hard to argue. It's hard to argue against that. I'm not an Eagles fan.
Like the Eagles.
I find them very sleepy. Eagles music to me reminds me of being in the back of a wood-paneled station wagon being driven to kindergarten. You know what I mean? But still, I thought for certain when I asked the question, and this is not a band that I'm a huge fan of, but I thought for certain everybody's knee-jerk reaction was going to be Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody said Queen, and I'm like, well, I mean, there's your answer, right? Hard to argue Queen.
Oasis.
Brian says
Oasis
Metallica.
Metallica's another one. Metallica, I'm like, ooh, it's hard to argue Metallica. Oasis, for me, is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I love Oasis. Love them. Styx, some people said. How about Journey?
Did you do a poll, or is this just a app mention sort of thing?
Okay, just an app mention, tons of votes for Rush. Tons of votes for Rush. Foreigner got some votes. Somebody said, no question, it's Cream. I think Queen and Kiss got the 2 most mentions. Queen's pretty hard to argue, right? Like
that was the first one that popped into my head there.
Mark, you look like you're in deep thought.
I'm thinking. Slipknot, there you go, for the hard rockers.
Okay.
Muse, internationally, they're good.
Metallica, though, is like when you think of like major bands,
right.
Metallica and Queen are the 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like going through my head and like what bands actually use the?
A lot. The Beatles,
a lot.
the Rolling Stones, the
There's
Who.
That stretch in the mid-2000s, like the Hives, the Vines.
The Verve.
Yeah.
Somebody said the Verve. I'm like, guys, I said the counts as a word.
Yeah.
Follow along.
Nathan asks, assuming the Pacers trade Malcolm Brogdon this week, who or what do they need to get back to help this team the most? I think if Jalen Smith walks, Jake, I still look at that 4 position. And I like O'Shea Brissett. And there's a club option the Pacers, I assume, will pick up on O'Shea Brissett. I think it's due tomorrow. It's a very manageable contract. But I think that's the spot. Kind of like that 6'9" guy that can stretch the floor a little bit, help you out as a versatile guy on the defensive end of the floor. That's probably where I would go.
Now, several people have said the, and that feels like cheating, right? There's no doubt, Kevin, 4s are, you can't have, in today's NBA, the reality is every player is a wing player. It's a matter of how far out on the wing and how quickly they can move from one to the other. You know what I mean?
Is your guy a starting 5? Is Isaiah Jackson a starting 5?
Yes. You mean a starting 5 position or a guy that makes you a starting 5?
Can he be a starting center in the NBA? In today's NBA?
Yes.
Certainly not 10 years ago, but today
Correct.
It's a relevant question. Can he be that?
Yes. He is freakishly athletic. I mean, he plays so above the rim, and I know that I'm using, now I sound like Jay Billis. It's unbelievable. I just watched him, and I'm like, this guy has endless spring to him. Now, he's not going to have that forever. But right now, I mean, good Lord, like the ball is in the vicinity of the basket area, and he either gets it or deflects it, depending on which side of the ball you're playing. But yes, I think that he can play the 5. Basketball has become basically positionless. One of the great questions for me about the NBA and the movement of the NBA that I've asked before is, let's say for the sake of argument, Kevin, that Greg Oden had never had knee problems. And Greg Oden enters the NBA as Greg Oden, and Greg Oden continues the trajectory of what we anticipated he was going to be and stays healthy for the better part of his career and is now winding down his career. Do we have an NBA right now full of back to the basket, shot blocking, 7-foot Roy Hibbert type players because teams in a copycat league were going out to try to counter Greg Oden? Or do we have what we have, and Greg Oden was the anomaly that eventually set back the Portland Trailblazers because their offense was slowed down by a big center?
Yeah, I think it was starting to evolve. I think, I always felt this about Oden. I thought when you saw him shoot foul shots, like that was nice form. I felt like Oden would have developed a nice little face-up jump shot.
Probably.
Does he stretch it to where Anthony Davis has stretched the floor or Dirk stretched the floor? Probably not. But I don't think... I never looked at Oden and thought, that's Shaq. Just from a sheer brute strength, just like that dude is bigger than everybody else times a million there. Like, is Greg Oden, is he DeAndre Ayton?
That's probably and DeAndre Ayton's another one. Look at that. I mean, he was a guy that was taken number 1 overall that's been a good player in Phoenix, and yet he's available, right?
And again, I want no part of it. Like, I've made this analogy prior.
Totally get it.
It's a bit running back in the NFL for me. I just don't want to see investments in the true kind of 5 men. I think Ayton's a fine player, but I don't need to see you putting heavy resources into that sort of spot.
That's totally fair. I do think that
give me more wings.
I think the knee injury of Greg Oden further accelerated the path that the NBA was going anyway in becoming positionless basketball. Like the last truly defined position was what you do with a 7-foot 265 guy without tremendous lateral speed, even though he had it for his size. But once he went by the wayside, then that opened the floodgates for players of all backgrounds to be able to play the 5 if they were athletic enough.
Brady brings up a good point. I kind of forgot about this. Remember when Oden joined the Heat?
Oh, yeah.
And Hibbert just dominated him.
Yeah.
In that playoff series.
Well, I mean, he was a shell of himself due to injury.
Right. I kind of forgot about that final run for him there. Yeah, going back to your Eric Gordon thing, I'd love to see Eric Gordon find some playoff team right now. I mean, Gordon, started with the Clippers? They didn't make any playoff runs when he was there, right? That was like bad Clipper teams. Pelicans, I guess, a little bit there. And then the Rockets had a couple, but...
How about Aerosmith?
Yeah, that's a popular one. JB and Richard want to go with Korn.
Yeah. Hey, I'll vote for that. Sure.
Negative. Texans Mark is right there with them, and I say big negatory. When I do these little questions, I don't necessarily always play judge and jury, but I will in this case.
AC/DC?
See, that's the thing. Acronyms, if you include acronyms, then U2 and REM are in the mix.
Which you include, right?
Yeah, I do. In that case, it's hard to argue U2 against U2. AC/DC and U2 are a push, right? That's Boardwalk and Park Place.
We haven't talked a whole lot of Colts lately. We'll do that next. Again, Mickey Shuey is going to join us here in about a half hour. We'll get more into the details on Indy 11. Is stadium proposal, is that the right word? Am I using the right word? I mean, they have bought the land.
That's actually a good question to ask him.
Yeah, we'll probably throw that at
Is this
Mickey.
A proposal or a statement?
Chad Buchanan,
stadium suggestion.
GM.
There you go. Suggestion.
Boy, that's one of the more expensive suggestions I've seen. Chad Buchanan, Pacers GM, 9 o'clock hour.
Put on your helmet. It's about to get real.
Coach Tom Allen, last year, Coach, you and I talked about managing expectations. Now you got to build them back up.
That chip on our shoulder, something to prove, has to be back there. We obviously got a whole bunch to prove. To me, that's where we got to begin. We got a lot of guys back from last year that got a really bad taste in their mouth and want to see the outcomes that are different. Love how our guys are working, but it's just about getting better every day.
Dan Dockage, weekdays noon to 3 on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Sign up for Lowe's MVP's Pro Rewards and Partnership Program to help level up your business. Program subject to terms and conditions, valid through 12/31/22. See Lowe's.com/L/Pro Loyalty terms subject to change.
You've been talking about the ring. Awesome. So what's next? Come see us at Chain Company and we'll figure it out together. If you know what engagement ring style you want, you're ahead of the game. And if you don't have a clue, no worries. We have tons of new styles and designs in every price range. Same with the Centerstone. We've got a massive selection of diamonds, all shapes, sizes, and prices. Or maybe you want something colorful like a ruby or a sapphire. We have those too. hand-selected for their beauty and brilliance by Tom Shane himself. We want this to be fun and easy for you guys. Our jewelry consultants don't work on commission, so it's a different kind of vibe here. No one's going to push you to make a decision. You already made one of the biggest decisions of your life. And one more thing, Shane Company offers a free lifetime warranty that even covers the center stone. When it comes to having your jewelry taken care of, you're set for life. By the way, congratulations.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
Hey, it's JMV. Race Trash Services, the largest independent recycling and waste solutions provider in the Indianapolis area, and right now, they're looking for great people to join the team. Raise is a family-operated business and has been providing Central Indiana with industry-leading recycling and waste disposal solutions since 1965. They focus a lot on the culture to make it a great place to work. Go to racetrash.com to see the career opportunities waiting for you. That's racetrash.com today. Raise, your recycling and waste solutions partner.
If you suffer from joint pain, from arthritis, or an injury, you know the traditional treatments. It goes pain meds and steroids and then surgery. This is Kevin Bowen, and I've got some great news for you. There is a better way right here in Indianapolis from local medical professionals at QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative medicine, and they have offices in Eagle Creek and Greenwood. They are an advanced, exciting, and natural alternative that can give you lasting relief using your body's own healing power. Listen, steroid shots are toxic to your joints, pain meds are addictive, and nobody wants to go under the knife. It's 2022, and those old ways are out, and the new ways are here in Indy. Regenerative medicine can restore and repair damaged joint tissue using the natural biologics, no drugs, no downtime, and no surgery. Call now and schedule for your free consultation. That's QC Kinetics, 463-235-7160, in Eagle Creek and Greenwood, 463-235-7160.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
WIBC HD2, W298BB, WIBC HD3, W228CX, Indianapolis.
The Phillies host the Cardinals in a clash of National League contenders. Saturday at 3:30 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
To Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
8 o'clock hour, it is Oasis from Mark Dykton. Kevin and Query here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan on a good-looking Tuesday. Good morning to you. Kevin, before we know it, we'll be in Westfield. We'll be talking about the Colts, and we'll be hearing the popping of pads eventually, right? It's probably closer than we realize.
Less than a month away, Jake. Training camp will begin again tomorrow. From Grand Park, we'll get a training camp schedule. I believe I heard practices kind of around lunchtime this year. Last year, they did morning practices. And I do think, Jake, part of it is people sitting in a room and saying, well, how do we get fans here? But then the football side saying, let's try to win a season opener.
Right.
So maybe schedule the practice times a little bit more from a 1 o'clock, body standpoint here. I know some might laugh at that thought, but when you've lost 7 straight to start the season, I do think there's some of that needs to be in the line of thinking there.
Let me ask you this. I still think of, and this is very antiquated, I realize, but when I think of NFL training camps, I mean, whether it be the Colts, the Rams, the Cowboys for that matter, go to California, I still think of there were, back in the Rose-Hulman days, and before that even, I covered the Anderson days, both.
Oh, yeah, I stayed in the Anderson dorms. Smith Hall, baby.
Yeah, so, I think about, the guys moving in and carrying their pillow and having this just long, dreadful look on their face. And
now, they do stay in a hotel up there.
So
at Grand Park.
They do? So my question, though, is take me through, because those days seemingly are over. The days of oh man, it's 2-a-days and guys are just dreading it and they're staying in a dorm and they're allowed 1 TV and a pillow and that's it. And that's all changed now. Give me a day in the life of an NFL training camp?
Yeah, so training camp's like about 3 weeks long now, Jake. Going off last year's schedule, I think a morning breakfast / meeting. I believe practice started at 10, if I'm not mistaken. That practice lasted about 90 or so minutes. Lunch, I would say a weight room activity, early afternoon, more meetings, and then I think an evening walkthrough. And then back to your hotel room, I'd say, 8-ish, 9-ish. I'm sure for rookies, you have some other additional stuff thrown in there. But I think that's kind of a rough sketch of what the day.
Do they have a little activity at night where everybody gets together and they play games?
When we were at Anderson, they had a pretty nice basketball field house. So you come in there and whatever, pig, horse, something along those lines.
You're going to laugh when I say this. I would think that pickup games were probably frowned upon, right?
Correct, certainly. Yeah, certainly there. But yeah, shooting around. I'm sure guys, go play video games, something along those lines. I think if you're veterans, there might be some rules of hey, your family's up here for the night. You can go, out and get ice cream with your kids or, something along those lines, or bring them into the facility and have, dinner with them. I think that's part of it as well. So we'll get that training camp schedule again tomorrow afternoon. Jake, I would say this offseason, the NFL, more than any other, we had a position that actually rivaled quarterback with news items.
That rivaled quarterback?
Yeah, quarterback.
I would go with, aside from, we know what Chris Ballard thinks that you think it is, right? Actually, probably not enough. You probably felt like there was not enough conversation about this.
Yeah, I appreciated some other teams putting more attention into it than the one here in Indianapolis.
You know, Mark, which one I'm talking about, right?
It definitely made me think. And Bowen, every time I freaking read or listen to Bowen, it's like a constant freaking barrage of wideouts.
Have you ever made him laugh before like that?
I did. I saw him last Monday. I did hear a little bit of that laugh there.
It's because he just slashed your tires.
Exactly. Wideout-wise, of course, Jake. Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. We've got looming contract decisions for Terry McLaurin still. Has the DK Metcalf thing been settled?
Ooh, that's a good question on DK Metcalf. Is he walking around still with his shirt off?
Wouldn't you if you were him?
Yeah. I saw a guy, by the way, in the neighborhood the other day with his shirt off. I'm like, good for him. Let's just say he didn't look like DK Metcalf.
Right.
And I respect him for
no fear, is that what you're saying?
No fear whatsoever with that. But Michael Pittman could be a name that this time next offseason, and maybe even not all the way until the summer, maybe it's next spring, we're talking about in this light of hey, the Colts need to give Michael Pittman a contract extension here. The thing I like about Pittman, one of the things, is he is very public with his goals. Last year, at this time, he was like, I want to double what I did as a rookie. So catches, yards, touchdowns, he looked at those numbers and said, all right, I'm going into year 2. I want to double all those numbers. And lo and behold, he did it. He had 88 catches last year. He had over 1,000 yards. He only had 1 touchdown as a rookie. He had 6 touchdowns last year. So he did that. This year, asked him a couple weeks ago, all right, what are your goals for year 3? Because now, this is such a critical year as he's in year 3 of a 4-year rookie deal. His goal this year is a little bit less tangible, or a little bit less, we can just look up his baseball card at the end of the year and we'll know if he achieved it or not. Jake, he says that he wants to be a definite number 1 wideout.
I think he could, right?
He goes, everybody has their own definition. I think I am that. I just need to prove that to other people. What would be your definition of a number 1 wideout? Again, last year for Michael Pittman, 88 catches for 1,082 yards. That ranked 18th in the NFL. Both of those, catches and yards, 18th in the NFL. And he had 6 touchdowns to go with that. So what would be your definition to Michael Pittman's label of wanting to be a definite number 1 wideout?
Well, aside from numbers, I think to be a number one, though, you've got to be able to have some stretch play, don't you think? Like, you've got to get behind defenses as a number one. He's become a very, very solid target. But do you think he needs to stretch a defense more? Or is that me just thinking of what we have come to know here in this market with T.Y. Hilton, Marvin Harrison, and then, although Reggie Wayne was a number one after he'd lost that step.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's Pittman's game, really. I think a couple things that I'd like to see, and I do think Matt Ryan can accentuate some of this. I felt like Pittman made some plays as a rookie where Phillip Rivers did a wonderful job, and some of this is schematic as well, getting a Michael Pittman the ball in space. I've always said this about Pittman, Jake. There is no USC pretty boy to him on the football field. I mean, hell, he got ejected from a game last year. He plays like his dad was a hard-nosed running back for 10 years in the NFL, which Michael Pittman Sr. was. So at 6'4" and 220 pounds and the ability to run, I mean, he runs very well for that size. I just think you need to get him the ball in some more favorable situations where he's got green grass, green turf in front of him, because I don't think a lot of DBs want to tackle him. And when they do want to tackle him, it often doesn't go very well for him. So I think less of stretch the field vertically, Jake, and a little bit more of can Michael Pittman make a play with the ball in his hand? Can he do that post catch? The other thing I'd like to see is just a little bit more of jump ball opportunities for him and him bringing down those opportunities. I mean, he is 6'4", 220.
Right.
You would think he should.
He started to show that, I thought, towards
that.
Midway through the year where he was a little more physical.
Was it San Francisco maybe in the rain where he kind of iced the game with one of those plays? I'm trying to think which one it was. Might have been Miami. Those are the games that are kind of popping into my head. But I have said this all along. I know some people disagree with it, and I think you've mentioned before, if you're going to put Michael Pittman on Cincinnati, where would he slot into the depth chart there? I totally get that. I think he can and will be a definite number one. How many definite number ones are there in the NFL? Are there a dozen? Are there 15?
15 is probably fair.
I think he can be that.
By the way, DK Metcalf played in his celebrity softball tournament or game in Seattle and spoke to the crowd in terms of the uncertainty or certainty of his future. If this sounds familiar in Indianapolis, stop me now. Metcalf said on the microphone, quote, "I know I've only been here 3 years, but y'all are my family now."
Boy, this is major PTSD right here. I mean, major.
I remember going to the Paul George softball thing. And
now, Paul was in the dugout, right? He wasn't talking to the crowd.
Kevin Pritchard. Yeah, that's correct. Kevin Pritchard was there, I remember. And I'm like, why is Kevin Pritchard here? It's like, he's trying to cement that relationship, huh? It's like 4 days later. By the way, KP, we need to talk. I think I want to see other people. PTSD is a good way of saying it. Yes. Very good way of saying it. Mark, what are you smirking at over there?
I'm just looking at this pop quiz right now.
Is there something on the pop quiz you find amusing?
No. It's just comment on what you said and then reading one of the answers, and I hope Kevin has to pronounce it later.
Okay.
Are you talking about the Frank Gore one?
Yeah.
Is Frank Gore boxing?
You knew who is boxing. Who did I see was getting
Adrian
ready
Peterson
to...
and Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
That's what the question is. Oh, Frank Gore's the answer to it.
Well, spoiler alert.
Well, yeah,
there's nobody.
Because we know people listening at 8:13 are calling in again at 9:25.
There's nobody.
Well, we're adjusting the pop quiz.
Oh, yeah,
today,
we are doing it earlier, right?
Yeah, because we've got Chad Buchanan coming on.
Chad Buchanan, Pacers GM, going to join us at 9:30. Again, we'll talk some Indy 11 here in about 15 minutes. Their stadium.
Okay.
Plan.
So before we get to Mickey, who wrote the column about the Indy 11, can I take this 5 minutes to express to you my concern?
Sure.
About the new stadium proposal?
And to be fair, real quick, Jake, I don't. It seems like, again, we'll get details from Mickey because I'm a little confused by them, but it doesn't seem like this is going to be funded strictly by our taxes.
No, I think that's fair. But here's my thing. Before the Indy 11 became a team, I had gotten an email that said, hey, just want to put this on your radar, but there is going to be a soccer team brought to Indianapolis, but the reason the soccer team is coming about is not because of necessarily a thirst for soccer, but rather a desire by the owning organization of said soccer team to get a publicly funded deal for a stadium because the ownership of the soccer team is a large construction building corporation. And they simply want to get a deal with the city to build a stadium for their profit. And a soccer team would allow them to do that. Not a dumb business move. I'm not
seems very smart to me.
Right. And I thought, okay, well, we'll see if that happens. And then all of a sudden I get probably 6 months later this thing about, hey, there's a new soccer team that's going to be coming to Indianapolis playing in the NASL, the North American Soccer League. And I thought, well, I'm not familiar with that league. But okay, I also don't claim to be a soccer expert. So the team is announced. They put out a thing for season tickets, and I thought, okay, I'll give this a shot. I bought season tickets for that matter. And before they had ever even played a game, before they, I think, had even established a roster, they sent out a thing that said, we'd like an $85 million stadium. And I thought, well, holy cow, that seems aggressive. Then all of a sudden the light bulb goes off in my head. Wait a minute, I remember that email I got. And I went back and looked at it, and the owner is very politically involved in Indiana. He's a very successful business guy. And is involved in different charities. I'm not saying a bad guy at all, but a very smart businessman. And so right then I thought, okay, maybe this is all kind of a ruse to get the end goal of a contract to build a massive facility and complex. And again, from a business standpoint, I understand that. At no fault of the Indy 11, I believe, though, that their timing falls victim to being a poor timing to the fact that when the city of Indianapolis in 2010, I'm going earlier than, I'm sorry, way earlier than that, 2005, somewhere in there, when the Colts were lobbying for a new stadium, and Bill Polian had said, it's just difficult to be competitive in this market. We're up against it. We need a new stadium, which I found odd because the NFL has a salary cap and revenue share. And at that time, the New Orleans Saints and Green Bay Packers seemed to be fairly successful, and the New York Jets suck, but whatever. The city of Indianapolis, and at that time, Mayor Bart Peterson felt this incredible threat that we cannot lose the Colts to Los Angeles, which I understand that fear, even though I don't think that it was ever actually a legitimate fear. But they gave the greatest publicly subsidized contract in the history of professional sports, in my opinion, to the Colts. And I get it. The Colts are a huge part of this city, and I get it. I know what it means to this town. But the tax dollars that went into Lucas Oil Stadium, when we as the taxpayers of Marion County were asked to give nearly $750 million for a stadium, and I get it. It brought the Super Bowl here. That was wonderful. There have been great moments. But when we were asked to do that, we were told repeatedly, if you do this, then we're done. We're not going to come back to you for more money for for sports arenas. We're just not going to. Not a single dollar. This is a multi-purpose facility, to the point where once they built it and realized that they had snafus where they needed an extra $100 million, and they went to the Colts. I don't remember the figure, but they went to the Colts and said, actually, we overextended ourselves. Can we renegotiate the lease? And the Colts said, we're just a tenant. We don't own it. We are just a tenant because it's a multi-purpose facility. It's not the Colts facility. It's a multi-purpose facility, meaning anything that comes through here that the city needs, One size fits all. We've taken care of it. So when we have a soccer team that says we need a stadium, guess what? We already took care of that. Thank you so much for coming to the table. You picked the right place to play because we have the facility for you. Well, but it's too big. We can't play here. Okay, then I guess you're not big boy enough. And if you want something, then you're going to have to build it on your own, and that's fine, but you can't, again, no fault of theirs. Circumstantially, they're victim to it, but we have already pledged every dollar that we as a city have been asked for public subsidy of stadiums, period. You have to draw the line somewhere. And unfortunately for the Indy 11, whose owner is a very smart businessman, except for the fact that in this particular circumstance, it is my belief that the one business area where he is flawed was his timing, because he entered into the arena too soon after, and or for that matter, simply after we already drew that line in the sand as a tax-paying public.
I believe in Mickey's story, he mentioned, and again, this is what we'll get some clarity on here in about 10 minutes.
And I may be totally off base there.
He said Indiana legislature funding about 80% of this and some district taxes that will also contribute to it. Again, it's a $1 billion redevelopment of Diamond Park site, which is located, butts up against West, and I think it's just north of White River. I need to double check on a map.
Do you know what that original land was?
It's not the GM stamping plan, is it?
The Green Lawn Cemetery.
Oh gosh, that's quite a size cemetery.
Right up your alley then.
Well, boy, this is where Jake's venom's coming
1,200 Union soldiers, 1,600 Confederate prisoners of war were, and those that perished at Camp Morton were buried at the Green Lawn Cemetery. And then once they realized that this was land that could be developed, by the late 1800s, they exhumed a percentage of those, they say all, and moved them to Crown Hill. Now, I've talked to people that will say, like, well, the area in Crown Hill's like a couple of hundred bodies. There were thousands at Green Lawn Cemetery. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that means don't develop it. It's been developed many times over. But for the sake, I do find it interesting. I'm telling you right now,
Jake's gonna be out there picketing.
No, I'm not saying that, because they've done other things that have gone there.
I'm kidding.
But I'm telling you, there are people that will tell you, like, hey, I've worked in, laying down wiring and lines and things like that, and they still find bodies out there. So if the Indy 11 play at this stadium and all of a sudden they lose their first 35 games, and they're like, weird things are happening.
Boy, Pele's tripped over the midfield stripe.
That's
there.
right.
Yeah, you never know who's, Greg Reichstraw is going to be seeing some things pop up there as a play-by-play announcer. I don't know if he's ever come across before. We'll get some clarity on that. Again, Mickey Shuey from the Indianapolis Business Journal did a really nice job reporting on that. We'll touch base with him in a few minutes. Chad Buchanan from the Pacers coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. Earlier pop quiz today, Mark. That's the plan of attack?
Yep, that's the plan.
A little bit earlier today, Chad Buchanan at 9:30. Let's hit a morning check down here on Kevin and Corey.
The Morning Checkdown. Brought to you by QC Kinetics, relieving your joint pain at QCkinetics.com on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
They build that soccer stadium, there'll be a real hand of God, a real
Look
player.
at that.
What the hell is that?
I'm telling you.
Road teams are just going to be shivering in their hotel rooms the night before.
I'm telling you, man.
They're here. That's how you open the stadium.
I mean, they're going to be leading it.
1890, Green Lawn Cemetery was closed down to new bodies going in.
They're going to be in the MLS in no time with the amount of defense they'll be able to play in that venue. Kind of a quiet day in Major League Baseball yesterday. Honestly, the biggest news, 12 guys suspended from the Angels and Mariners brawl on Sunday. Phil Nevin, the interim manager there for Joe Madden, gets 10 games. Jesse Winker, 7 games there. White Sox lose the Angels 4-3. Cleveland lose 14-1 to the Twins. Cardinals beat the Marlins 9-0. Indians on a road trip here coming up, but they will play at home July 4th. Iowa, it's a 6:15 first pitch from Victory
That's
Field.
always a kind of a fun game, 4th of July game at Victory Field.
Cubs taking on the Reds, too. So
yeah, coming up off day yesterday.
Well, that's a clash of the Titans, isn't it?
Get ready, Field of Dreams game.
28-45,
right?
25-47.
NLCS preview right there.
Indiana Fever yesterday losing at Phoenix 83-71. Fever have lost 2 in a row there, now 5-15 on the WNBA season.
But just a little bit earlier, the Colts will release their training camp schedule on Wednesday. Report date for veterans, July 26th at Grand Park. Typically, the first practice day is then the next day, so I think looking around Wednesday, July 27th for the first day there. And remember, the Detroit Lions coming to Grand Park this year for joint practices, I believe August 17th and 18th.
I don't really get that, though. If you really want to prepare yourself for the NFL rigors, are the Lions the team that you want as your...
Very fair. I mean, you got to think Dan Campbell's boys will up the physicality,
their
right?
Kneecaps will be...
All right, everyone got double knee pads on today? Yeah, we're going to need them to face the Fighting Campbells there. The Colts will play the Lions in a preseason game.
Didn't he say he drank like an insane amount of coffee like every day?
Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just envision him just taking the Keurig and just dumping it. I mean, shotgunning it.
I found it. He drinks 2 large cups of coffee with 4 shots of espresso each. How's that man? I had a heart attack yet.
Wow. That's
He is a big dude.
I'm not going to lie to you. There are certain people that I look at and I go, how did I have a heart attack before that guy?
You know,
Right?
he was a finalist for the Colts head coaching job after Josh McDaniels said no.
Really?
Man, if you're a barista, you better be getting a nice tip. That's a lot of...
He'd like Monument Circle because we have 2 Starbucks on the same circle, right?
Yep.
Dan Campbell, Frank Reich, and Leslie Frazier. Those were your 3 after Josh McDaniels said, see ya.
4 shots of espresso per cup?
Yep.
That doesn't strike me as the healthiest thing.
40 ounces of coffee with 8 shots of espresso total. Each day.
Get some more into the Indy 11 news, their stadium plan. We'll do that next year. Mickey Shuey from the Indianapolis Business Journal joins us next.
Sometimes an injury or death happens due to someone else's mistake. Find justice with the injury attorneys at Parr Ritchie at 317-269-2509. PARRinjury.com.
Indy 11 is celebrating Independence Day Saturday, July 2nd with downtown's only fireworks show that night after their 7:30 match versus Miami FC at Carroll Stadium. Presented by IBEW Local 481. It'll be great family fun with tickets starting at just $15. Come early for live music by Cam Cole from Apple TV's Ted Lasso show. Get $11 meal deals and $4 Heineken. Then stay late for a fireworks show synced to a soundtrack curated by JMV's Takeover program on B105.7. Get tickets and details at Indy11.com.
Hey, it's JMV, and guys, if you've noticed a lack of energy, motivation, and drive, it could be low T. Schedule your complete health assessment at Low T Center. They now offer the convenience of monitored self-inject at-home testosterone treatments for just $155 a month, cash pay, or covered by most health insurance. If you don't live near a Low T Center or you just need the convenience of a home treatment, Low T Center makes it easy. Only your first 2 visits are in person. Go to lowtcenter.com now to book online. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
The Ride with JMV.
Desmond Bain of the Memphis Grizzlies joins us. Klay Thompson had mentioned your teammate, Jaren Jackson Jr., in a tweet. Does that stir the pot even more so between you and the Warriors?
You know, anytime you play a team in a playoff series, you develop a little bit of rivalry, tension, and the fact that after winning the championship, he's still thinking about us is a good sign for us and where we're trending towards.
The Ride with JMV.
Weekdays 3 to 6.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. It's Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
This news broke on Friday morning, and our next guest had it for some great detail in his story via the Indianapolis Business Journal. He is Mickey Shuey. He is on the Payless Liquors hotline with us right now. Mickey, I want to make sure I have this correct. I called it a stadium proposal earlier. Is that like the right phrasing that I have with this and what Indy 11? They've bought the land in the Diamond Park site. Is that kind of the accurate way to describe this?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. But yeah, it is still a proposal. This is the same proposal that they had a few years ago, back in 2019. And now that they have the site, the Diamond Chain Manufacturing site, they're really kind of showing that they're ready to move forward with this project. It's still in the preliminary stages. They haven't gotten any city approvals or anything like that yet. So you're right to say it's still a proposal, but they're kind of showing their cards and saying, hey, we're ready to do this now.
Okay, Mickey, let me just paraphrase what I just said in a long diatribe here that has been my concern from day one when it comes to this. And then I want you, Mickey Shuey, as somebody who is far more in tune than I, to tell me if I'm way off base, which I may be. My original concern with the Indy 11 is that it was a team whose ownership was less interested in the soccer community of Indianapolis and more interested in a vehicle that would allow them to get a mass construction contract with the city or state for profit. But that being said, I feel like when Lucas Oil Stadium was built, and this is what I was just saying on the air here, that it was billed or sold to the taxpayers of Indianapolis as the last extension of a hand by the city or the state, because it was a multi-purpose facility that was going to be one size fits all, and that we as taxpayers, if we built it at an incredible sum of public subsidy, would not be asked again to give tax dollars. And therefore, this time at no fault of the Indy 11, we have to say no because that line in the sand has already been drawn. Is there any accuracy to what I'm saying, number one? And number two, is there a single dollar of public subsidy that would go into this plan?
So I'll answer I'll answer the second part first. There is expected to be what's called a public-private partnership as part of this deal, and that was actually included in the same bill that was passed by the legislature back in 2019 that gave Gainbridge Fieldhouse money. It gave the city a mechanism to do a new expansion of the convention center and a new hotel on Pan Plaza. So there is expected to be a public-private partnership there to the tune of about 80-20 in terms of the split for who would pay.
80 being public or private?
80 being public. And that's still being worked out. I should note that there have not really been any substantive conversations between the city and Ursula Ozdemir, the owner of Indy 11, about what exactly that will look like. But there is a mechanism in place that will allow the city or state to fund up to 80% of this project, up to 80% of the stadium portion of this project, with the rest being done by way of private funding. Now, that's not to say that also couldn't get some sort of subsidy, but there's no guaranteed mechanism in place for that to happen. As to your other portion of your as you call it, the diatribe, I can't really speak to that other than to say that I think when Lucas Oil Stadium was built, you're right, it was kind of pitched as the last big public venue that would be funded, but at the same time, there was really no talk of professional soccer in Indianapolis at that time. That was back in 06, 07 that they were pitching that, and Indy 11 didn't come along until 2013. So the state didn't know what it didn't know. The city didn't know what it didn't know. And that is that a professional soccer team would come along and ask for similar funding. And the state, of course, went ahead and approved funding for that. But, of course, it still has to go through a bunch of hoops, I should say.
Again, Mickey Shuey's with us, real estate, tourism, sports business reporter for the Indianapolis Business Journal. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. On the funding aspect to it as well, Mickey, did I see something in there mentioned kind of on district taxes that would contribute to paying for this project?
Yeah, so there's not there. That's exactly how this would be paid for the stadium. The stadium would be covered through what's called a professional sports development area, and that's basically where the city would draw a big circle or a big box around the area in which the stadium is located. In this case, the Diamond Chain site, and maybe some other properties there. And that district would essentially collect all those taxes, whether it's income tax, sales tax, property tax, emissions tax, whatever that might be. And a large portion of that funding, perhaps as much as 80%, as I mentioned, would go toward paying off any bonds that would be issued to cover the cost of the stadium itself.
So 80% of the funding will come directly from that area's taxes.
So that's a user tax, right?
Yeah, essentially. And yes, that's the idea. And it's very similar in nature to what is a tax increment financing district, except tax increment financing districts that are used for apartments, hotels, things like that, are typically limited to property tax.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mickey. The stadium that is proposed to be built, I'm going to run a couple numbers here, is slated to seat how many people?
20,000.
Okay. And it would host other events besides soccer matches, or it would be originally, upon idea, only a soccer stadium?
It would absolutely be available for other uses, such as U.S. men's and women's national team exhibitions or friendlies, as well as lacrosse, rugby, high school and college soccer games. I think the high school games are now played at Cranor up on 16th Street, and I think they would move those games. The idea for Indy 11 is to have those games moved to the stadium for in perpetuity. That's, of course, yet to be determined, but it would also be available for music events, things that are too large for the TCU amphitheater at White River State Park and too small for a Lucas Oil Stadium type venue.
Okay, and that's cool. So what's the average attendance that the Indy 11 gets right now?
That is the big challenge that Ursal and company kind of face right now, in that they are currently averaging about 6,050 people per game at Michael Carroll Stadium this season.
Okay, and there is, because this is my suspicion, are we going to be told, or at any point when this is proposed, are the words or the letters MLS going to come into play?
That is certainly something that's up for debate. In talking to Ursal about this directly, just before the story broke, he said that he didn't regret talking about MLS in the past, but right now he's focused on this stadium. That's not to say that as soon as the stadium's done, he's not going to launch another bid to go after MLS, but it seems right now he's reading the leaves and they aren't really showing anything with MLS. So he's kind of foregoing that for now and instead focusing on the stadium with possibly hopes to come back and visit that in the future.
Because the reason I ask, the entry fee into the MLS right now is what, $200 million?
It might even be higher than that now. And I know that's what it was a few years ago.
And he would be prepared to pay that on his own?
He was not willing to get in those conversations. He really was focused on the stadium, but one would expect that we have to keep in mind, though, that there are other minority owners of Indy 11. There's 7 other minority owners. So I don't think that Ursal would necessarily be paying that entire fee all on his own. But looking at the longevity of an MLS team, you also have to take into account that you're going to have to pay more staff. You're going to have to pay higher salaries for your players, and you're going to have more resources to offer your team. So I think those are all more financial considerations that need to be taken into account for Ursal and for any other owner that might be trying to make a pitch for MLS.
Mickey, I want to go back, and again, Mickey Shuey's with us, who, again, terrific detail and reporting on the Indy 11 Stadium proposal here. I want to go back to just some details within this. Outside of the stadium, what else is being proposed around this site? And for those that might be unfamiliar exactly where the area is, how close is this to like Lucas Oil Victory Field?
So this is about a block south of Victory Field. Essentially, it's just on the other side of the railroad tracks, the elevated railroad tracks.
So like Kentucky Avenue right there?
Yep, along Kentucky Avenue. And then it's about a block and a half, 2 blocks from Lucas Oil Stadium, just west of that. And then it's also just across the White River from the new Elanco Animal Health headquarters at that GM stamping plant site. That's been a problem for so many years. As far as the other components, they're really trying to make this a true district, something that was conceived of for Lucas Oil Stadium and even to an extent for when it was built Conseco Fieldhouse, now Gamebridge Fieldhouse. But this is really taking the way Ursal puts it, a comprehensive approach to district planning, in that it's going to have apartments, it's going to have retail that can support visitors and residents, it's going to have office space, parking garages, even a public plaza where they can do small events in conjunction either with the stadium or other community events happening. And I should also note that it sounds like they are also going to have some sort of tailgate parking for soccer fans. I know that for some soccer fans that's a big deal, so I should note that is going to likely be a component of this in some way.
What do you think, Mickey, are the remaining hurdles with this? I think 2025, if I remember correctly, is when they are hoping to open the stadium. That seems like a pretty quick timeline to me. I know very little, but I don't know. It seems a bit quick. What are some of the remaining questions left unanswered?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a pretty aggressive timeline when you look at the fact that the city has to still meet with the ownership group and figure out exactly how much of a subsidy is going to be offered for the commercial district, but also what the actual financing mechanisms are going to look like for the stadium. And then you also have to take into account that the Diamond Chain facility still has to be torn down, and there's a chance that there might be some environmental remediation that goes on there. Mm-hmm. We don't know what that looks like, but the way Keystone, the Keystone Corp, the group that will actually be doing the development, puts it, they do this all the time, and they're prepared for whatever happens.
Okay, Mickey, let me, and I want to be clear, Mickey Shuey is our guest from the Indianapolis Business Journal. I'm asking you this because of your expertise, not because I'm in any way, shape, or form pretending that you're like on one side of it, right? I want to be clear of that. But my concern is this, and you're a far smarter guy when it comes to business than I. I mean, it's in your title, for crying out loud. So let me give you my concern, and then you can tell me if I'm nothing more than a dumb sports guy who's still trying to finish a general studies degree. When I think about this city in particular, and let's say I start on the north side where I grew up around 82nd Street and I move north, I can see, starting at 82nd Street and going north, I can see abandoned strip malls that were very recently, within 10 to 15 years ago, the place to be, the hot retail spot. And it was hot for a couple of years, and there were cafes and fun things, and everybody loved it. And then it moved to 96th Street, and now all of a sudden that's empty. And then at 96th Street, there was a hot new area with a hot cafe and a hot coffee store, and that was all cool for a couple of years. And then that moved to 116th Street, and now we've got a second abandoned strip mall. And you don't have to go far to see these. You can swing a dead cat anywhere and see empty grocery store and retail spaces and whatever else. And I get that. That's part of urban sprawl. In the downtown areas of Indianapolis, my concern is that at times we are strictly growing too fast to the point where we are ignoring the fact that we are not taking care of areas A and B that are now being vacated because we're so focused on area C that's going to be the hot new district, and we're doing so at the cost of other areas that are being left behind and becoming an eyesore. And this is my concern with this, that we already have areas in downtown now that were hot new places 20 years ago that are just an eyesore vacant area that's become almost a problem spot, and now we're just shifting our attention elsewhere to forget about areas that we neglected. Now, am I strictly like a 90-year-old guy in a 49-year-old body?
I don't think that you should look at yourself that way, because I understand where you're coming from. But I think it's also worth noting that while it seems like some are forgetting about those areas, such as per se, the mall, there are people who are actively working on finding solutions for those areas. We're seeing it right now with City Market. That used to be a booming area 20, 30 years ago, and now it's kind of on a backslide. But there are efforts that are already underway to revitalize that area and get more people living downtown who are going to use that area. I mean, the city just announced a $175 million project through Gershman Partners, another developer here, to revitalize that entire block that City Market's on. And then we're going to have eventually the redevelopment of the heliport. We're going to have redevelopment of Old City Hall at some point. So I understand where you're coming from, and I think your listeners probably do too, but it's important to keep perspective that just because some people have forgotten about these areas doesn't mean that they're not being worked on and being looked at. There is a concerted effort happening right now, particularly downtown, to bring more people living down here and to get more amenities that people are going to want down here.
Here's the thing, and this is, again, an increase, and I know that I'm being the old contrarian here, and I apologize. I just want to make sure all sides are spread out here. But in terms of and I love downtown. I love it. I love working down here. I love downtown Indianapolis, and I want it to thrive more than as much as anybody. But in terms of the downtown residents, I feel like, Mickey, that now has been thrown a curveball, because the real selling point towards getting young college graduates to move to and work in downtown Indianapolis is, hey, you can live right down here in one of the lofts, and it's great because you're walking distance to the Salesforce Tower, you're walking distance to the Regions Bank building, you're walking distance to all these areas, and now everybody's working from home anyway. Yeah, everybody's walking distance from work because guess what? It's in the next room over. And I know that slowly we're getting back into, but are we now at a watershed moment in terms of the American commerce where we're seeing more and more people are living wherever they want as opposed to where they have to in relation to their proximity to work?
Yeah, that's a great question there, and I think that's a little bit above my pay grade to answer that one. But what I'll say is this: I think that you're right that we're kind of at a watershed moment in terms of downtown, in that we are nearing a point where most of the people are starting to come back to the office. Not everybody, but once Salesforce comes back, if they come back, once Rolls-Royce has more people working downtown, which that could be a while, I think that we're going to continue seeing more people coming down to work, but what downtown is trying to be now is more than just close access to work. It's trying to be its own neighborhood that has these amenities that go beyond, oh yeah, you're close to work, you can walk there. It's trying to be kind of this neighborhood that has all these things like parks and entertainment venues and places to go eat and have grocery stores, things like that. So it seems like that transformation was kind of already underway for downtown anyway, because before the pandemic, I should say, because the focus is less now on you're close to work and more on you can be part of this neighborhood. So I think that there's still some work to be done. I think that anybody who lives, works, or visits downtown will agree to that. But I think by framing it more as a neighborhood than just you're close to work, that's kind of a step in the right direction.
Mickey, last one from me, and outside of the obvious funding question, I would say the thing that was most eye-popping, potentially concerning to me, is simply how big this stadium is and the ability to try and fill it on a regular basis. You know, I went to the Indians game the other night. You're talking about an extremely established brand. Frankly, baseball is more popular than soccer, and it's a great family atmosphere, and they get I think it was a little over 12,000 on Friday night, and that was their biggest crowd since 2019. And now the Indy 11, believes or thinks that, they're going to get that on a, frequent basis. And again, if that was just 12,000, that still is what, 2/3 of their stadium capacity, not even that. Do they really feel like there is that sort of draw, that sort of crowd for a consistent double-digit thousand stadium when capacity is at the 20,000 mark? And right now, 6,000 is their average level over at Carroll Stadium?
I certainly think that's probably one of the biggest questions before them now. And what I will say is this. The Indy 11 really are going hard after the younger demographic that loves the idea of being downtown and doing things. In some ways, I love baseball, but in some ways that's drawing a much different demographic. I mean, it's drawing the younger families, but soccer by its nature just draws a different demographic. It's also very popular in the tech sector. And Indy has a growing tech sector, especially as the state continues to invest more to bring more of those tech firms here, including sports tech firms, I should note. So I think in their mind, there's plenty of room to grow the fan base for Indy 11. As far as the seating overall, I think that will really come into play and be an advantage when it comes to non-Indy 11 events, such as exhibition matches for U.S. men's and women's national teams, as well as concerts. I think that by having a 20,000-seat outdoor stadium that can accommodate concerts, that's going to be a big deal for downtown Indianapolis and bringing larger events. I mean, not to say that they don't already.
Mickey Shuey, again, his latest there. It's at Mickey Shuey, Shuey, on Twitter there. And he broke this news on Friday. Mickey, before we let you go, just to kind of bring it full circle and really appreciate your time and listening to all of our questions. I know a lot of these don't have necessarily concrete answers. For those that maybe missed the beginning of it, from a funding standpoint, that picture looks like what for this project?
The picture is coming into view, and it looks like, based on state legislation that happened in 2019, the city and state are going to pay for about up to 80% of the stadium, of Indy 11's proposed stadium, and the team would be responsible for about 20% of the cost. And then the remaining portion of the commercial district would largely be covered by the team and its developer, Keystone Corp, though the city could also provide some incentives for that side as well.
And that 80% comes from the district tax?
Yes, that would be built through a PSCA, which captures taxes from a predetermined area surrounding the stadium itself.
Mickey, I know you've been a busy man. Sorry about that. I know you've been busy the last handful of days, so really appreciate you making time for us on this Tuesday morning. Great insight, and I know you'll keep us abreast of the story.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
That is Mickey Shuey right there, real estate, tourism, sports business reporter for the IBJ. We are well over, so we'll take a break, come back, and unpack that.
At Diamonds Direct right now, there's nothing standing in your way of owning the piece of jewelry you've been dreaming of. No down payment and no finance charges for 5 whole years on any purchase. Take the amazing Diamonds Direct price you're used to, divide by 60, and that's your payment. It's a smart way to buy. Keep your money in your pocket and still add that amazing ring, band, or bracelet to your collection. Even the upgrade you've been wanting. 5 years, 0 interest on any purchase. Only at Diamonds Direct. Get all the details at diamondsdirect.com. On approved credit.
We are in the most active season of the year right now. Outdoor activities are abundant, but if you have joint pain, you just can't live like you want to. Hip pain, knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain, it sucks the fun out of living. But QC Kinetics can help people get the fun back. Advanced regenerative treatments from local medical professionals right here in Indy. QC Kinetics has locations in Eagle Creek and Greenwood. We're talking about in-office, non-surgical treatment that can repair and restore damaged tissue in your joints, giving you real, lasting relief from pain. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in cutting-edge, all-natural options, and the patient satisfaction reports are incredible. They have over 100 clinics nationwide, including, again, right here in Indy and Eagle Creek and Greenwood. So give them a call for a free consultation to 463-235-7160. You can get real relief from pain with no surgery, no drugs, no downtime. So call QC Kinetics today, 463-235-7160.
When you're ready to trade up from ordinary to extraordinary, visit the Midwest's premier entertainment destination, Four Winds Casinos. Exceptional food, shows, shopping, and fun at Four Winds Casinos. With locations in South Bend, New Buffalo, Hartford, and Dowagiac. Visit fourwindscasinos.com and trade up from ordinary to extraordinary. Four Winds Casinos.
The IndyCar Series races on the road course at Mid-Ohio. Sunday at noon on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It's Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Kevin, I want to make clear, and for people listening, I want to make clear, I don't want, again, I can't emphasize this enough, and I appreciate people's what seems to be more of a patience and an understanding of where I'm coming from than when I first used to be vociferous about these things, say 10 or 15 years ago. I am 1,000% for the progress of this city, the growth of this city, the vision of this city. 1,000%. I just personally feel like right now, if we are going to be appropriating funds before we get to new ventures, there are too many areas right now that we need to shore up. And I have always gone back to, it's just like when you have your bills at home. You have your luxury bills and you have your necessity bills. Your electricity, your water, and your rent or mortgage are necessities. And if all of a sudden those are getting neglected and the neighbors see that you're installing a satellite dish at your house, they're going to question your priorities. And when we have areas of this city and the infrastructure thereof that I believe need to be addressed, that's not to say that I'm not for the vision, the growth, and the progress of this city, but I believe the latter to be luxuries and other areas that I believe to be necessities that should be prioritized.
No, I think you make a lot of good points, Jake. Clearly, Indy 11 is looking for an area that is specific to downtown. I remember having this conversation, ironically enough, with Andrew Luck. This is about half dozen years ago now, because we've heard these sort of stadium proposals for, Indy 11's been around since when? What did Mickey say, 2013? This has been going around for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
And Luck, I remember, just was adamant of it's got to be downtown. It's got to be downtown. And certainly you understand the reasons for that. And like you said, Jake, there are certainly areas of our city right now that are eyesores. Obviously, Indy 11, their motive is not necessarily to address those, which you understand where they're coming from that standpoint as well. The funding aspect and the 80% district tax, user tax, I think that was a good word to use with that. I just keep on coming back to the return on investment from an attendance standpoint. And when your main tenant is currently drawing 6,000, the main tenant being Indy 11, and they want to get to a stadium that is 20,000. And I was just at Indianapolis Indians game on Friday night, and that crowd is 12,000, and that's the biggest crowd they've had in 3 years. I get that soccer is a little bit younger, a little bit more techie. I think it is wildly ambitious to think that they would routinely draw 15,000 on a home game basis.
The best way I can say it is this, and I love you. I'm telling you right now, you cut me, and I bleed the torch. I love Indiana. I love the city of Indianapolis. I love our downtown. It's a crown jewel. I've been as proud of it as anything. But the best way that I can say it is simply this. I'm all for trying to capitalize on the growth and the emergence of a downtown area. But have you been to ours lately? That train left the station, and now we're simply trying to get it back to the platform before we launch it back into other tracks.
Does this help?
I get that question, and that's a fair one, and it's a fair way to look at it. It's a fair strategy.
Because, again, it is it is, to look at it Indy 11's point of view, it's going to a demographic that is younger.
Understood, but that's to my personal belief is, does it help? That's a fair question. It's a chicken and egg question to an extent, but I believe that it helps, except for that it is based upon or billed as being helped by the vibrance of downtown. So until we can get that vibrance of downtown back, we can't parlay off of that. It's hard to spin off of it when in other words, it's hard to do a spin off of Happy Days when Happy Days has been canceled, right? And so I love downtown Indianapolis, but we have major areas of concern right now in terms of the vacancies thereof. And I think we need to address those again and get those taken care of before we spin off elsewhere.
If you missed it, it'll be up on the podcast. Mickey Shuey from the Indianapolis Business Journal. Really good stuff from him on details with Indy 11 and their stadium proposal. Again, just south of Victory Field. That is the plan there. Chad Buchanan, Pacers GM, is going to join us here in about a half hour. We'll also do the pop quiz coming up in the next segment. Kevin Aquari on a Tuesday here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
School is in session.
Coach Jeff Brown, as you're in the middle of this summer, what do you see out of your players thus far?
For us, I'll just be blunt. It's about getting everybody healthy. In order for us to win at a high level, we're going to need everybody healthy and ready to go. So we're very cautious and careful how we do it. We understand that while coaching is important, the players on the field are more important, and we've got to get these guys healthy and ready to go for game one.
Dan Dockage, weekdays noon to 3 on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, tennis fans, with the BetRivers.com sportsbook app, you can smash, slice, and spin your way to big tennis paydays. That's because we're serving up the excitement of live in-game betting, where you can bet on all the action, including point-by-point betting from tournaments around the world. Plus, with BetRivers' award-winning customer service, it's game, set, and match. Download the BetRivers.com sportsbook app. It's a whole new game.
Must be 21. Must be located in Indiana. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. 1-800-994-8448.
Here's what's happening with the Fan.
Hit the links at the Dan Dockich Annual Tom Dockich Memorial Golf Outing, presented by Franciscan Health, July 18th at Golf Club of Indiana. Call your buddies and register your team today. Remember to follow the Fan on all of your favorite social media platforms. The Fan is on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Like and follow the Fan to stay up to date on all of our giveaways and all things sports.
For more info, click on 1075thefan.com.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
WIBC HD2, W298BB, WIBC HD3, W228CX, Indianapolis.
Rays, Red Sox, followed by the Mariners and the Padres. The coverage begins Monday at 1 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Chad Buchanan, by the way, is going to join us coming up. He's the general manager of the Pacers 30 minutes from now. You know, he was actually born 10 days after I was.
Really?
That? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always enjoy listening to him. I think he brings good insight and clearly someone that Pacers organization holds in high regard. So looking forward to catching up with him about the Pacers draft. And again, free agency, a little bit over 48 hours away. The Pacers' in-house free agents, Ricky Rubio, TJ Warren, Jalen Smith, Lance Stevenson. TJ Warren, Jake?
You know, somebody asked me about TJ Warren yesterday, and I said, you know what? TJ Warren was just a great addition, honestly. I mean, because they basically stole him from Phoenix. He's a nice player, quiet guy, didn't require a lot, but was a good, solid scoring player. I just think, unfortunately, from a health standpoint, you're at the end of the rope there, right?
Yeah, I don't think you can give him anything significant. Chris Bauer has done this a couple times. Jack Mewhort is one that comes to mind of, a guy that, when healthy, has been a good player for you. You give him kind of that 1-year contract to say, all right, we can't guarantee you a starting spot. We're not going to even sniff a contract that would indicate that you are a starter for us. But here's a short-term deal. maybe some injury incentives in it, and you come into our building and you see if you can compete for a spot. Because when healthy, I would agree. Warren's a guy that, has been helpful, and he also is at a position of need.
Boy, you just completely forget about him, right?
He's kind of that 3-4, but with foot injuries and the lingering nature to the injury, and just the complexity of it, just seems like there hasn't been a great grasp on what exactly it is, several setbacks with that injury. In no way, shape, or form are you bringing him back and say he is a definite starter. But I'd be fine with some short, 1 year, very small cap hit sort of deal with him.
Here is a great question that someone asked me to ask to Chad Buchanan. And it really is a great question. And that is, we know about the situation with Jalen Smith, right? The Pacers, because of a weird clause in the way that they acquired him from Phoenix, are limited in the amount that they can contractually offer to re-sign him versus what others could get him for. So the question that was asked to me, which is a really good one, is could the Pacers come up with an agreement with, say, give me a team off the top of your head, Kevin?
The Thunder.
The Oklahoma City Thunder. Could the Pacers come up with an agreement to the Oklahoma City Thunder of, hey, if you guys sign Jalen Smith to the contract that he deems worthy, then as soon as you have contractually signed him, we will trade Malcolm Brogdon to Oklahoma City for him. Thus, we are not the ones signing him to that contract. We're acquiring him after he has been signed elsewhere.
Yeah.
Now, I think that once a player signs as a free agent, they can't be traded for a certain amount of time, right?
I believe that is correct, and I think there might be a restriction on the team that is letting that guy go as well. So basically, there's not that loophole around it to where you can just do something along those lines.
So you can't trade back for a player that left you in free agency?
I don't know that for sure, but I think there are some restrictions on it. Like, I know this is not the exact comparison on it, but Malcolm Brogdon signed the extension here. Was it last offseason? I think it was. And remember, the Pacers couldn't trade him last year at all. So I think it's one of those parameters on the Jalen Smith thing. I mentioned earlier, Kyrie Irving opting in with the Nets, to me, I think that's a good thing when you look at Malcolm Brogdon's situation, assuming you are in the camp of wanting Brogdon to be moved. It keeps a point guard off the market. And now I look at it and say, all right, Jalen Brunson from Dallas, him as an unrestricted free agent, who swings and misses on him? Who tries to go after Jalen Brunson and who misses? Does Dallas re-sign him? Therefore, the Knicks and their young assets, now they feel like they're a needy point guard team, and that's where Brogdon comes into play. That is probably top of mind for me when you look at Brogdon. Someone asked us earlier, exactly what would you get for him? Again, I look in that 3-4 area. Preferably aligning a timeline that you already have with some of these younger guys, but outside of Buddy Hield and Myles Turner, I'm not looking for anything.
Buddy Hield's another one we just you kind of forget about him, right? I mean, I actually watched, and do you believe in body language?
To a degree, yeah.
I would watch games this year when Buddy Hield was on the floor, checking in and out, that kind of thing. And I watched his body language and the body language of his teammates. And to be honest with you, he looked like he enjoyed being here, and his teammates looked like they enjoyed having him here. And I think that there was kind of this stereotype of or this preconceived notion of him of well, Buddy Hield's just a guy that wants to go out and get his. And I mean, I don't know why I thought that, but when he gets hot, I mean, he's a streak shooter, right?
A lot of the game, Buddy likes guys that just chuck it, and that's kind of Buddy's game. So that's where some of the negative stereotype comes. Clearly, him and Tyrese Haliburton have a relationship, and I thought that was important when the trade happened. Haliburton's in a new city for the first time in his NBA career, and he's kind of in scramble mode and probably thinking to himself, what's going on right now? And I think Buddy Hield was a bit of a stabling presence for him. I also feel this with Buddy Hield. It kind of amazes me when you look at NBA three-point leaders over the past few seasons. And I'm pretty sure Buddy Hield is like number one on the list. Because, again, he's available every night. And when you've had the injury issues that the Pacers have had, having a guy like Buddy Hield that simply puts on his jersey and suits up and goes out there and plays is something that should not be taken for granted at all. Again, there's a balance, Jake, because I've mentioned it since Friday morning when Benedict Mathurin became a Pacer. I don't want to take too many minutes away from him and Haliburton and Duarte, but I think having Buddy Hield and those four guys, and those be kind of your main backcourt minutes, potentially one or two of those guys playing the three a little bit, I think that's a fine kind of quartet to roll with.
You mentioned Hield and Haliburton. I don't know what the relationship was in Sacramento. I mean, I would imagine it was good, right? But you got to think that there has to be some chemistry or some bond that takes place between players when they are traded together somewhere,
sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember Eric Montross, who I did not know, really, but certainly being of the same area and age. I mean, I knew plenty of people that know him pretty well. One of the stories I've always heard about Eric Montross that just, I had never thought about this kind of a thing when it comes to the NBA until I heard this story, and then I really sat back and thought about it. Maybe because he was, we're of the same age. But in 97, I think it was, 98, somewhere in there, Montross was with, I think it would have been Philly. And he, in those days, I don't know if they were flying private or commercial or whatever. It was probably around the time when teams really started to strictly charter stuff. But Montross, the story came to me secondhand, was in the airport and was going up the escalator to the area where, I'm assuming it was the private area, the international area, whatever, where the charters were. But he's going up the escalator for a road trip to go to the plane, and Jerry Stackhouse is on the down elevator. And Montross is like, where are you going? Because they're teammates, right? Like, did you forget something? Stackhouse looks at him and is like, nah, dude, we were just traded. He's like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we're traded, man. We got to go to Detroit. So he got up to the top of the platform, got on the down escalator, gets down to Jerry Stackhouse. Is like, wait, what did you just tell me?
Yeah, Terminal actually 3
Correct.
Is where
They just diverted our flight. We got to go to Detroit now. We got a game in 2 days in Auburn Hills.
That's great.
So, like, here's a guy probably with and I have no idea what Montross and Stackhouse, I mean, both of them are Carolina guys, so I'm assuming they probably got along well anyway. But, I mean.
Well, think about Victor and Domas, Jake. I mean, they always kind of had that bond here.
Probably, yeah, exactly,
being
right?
traded from the Thunder and an organization saying no to them.
Now, that's your familiarity, right?
Yeah, I think same ages helped in that area where Buddy and Tyrese aren't the same age. Vegas came out with some over-unders on rookies and their points per game. Where do you think they slotted Jaden Ivey?
In terms of what Jaden Ivey's average scoring point per game is going to be next year?
Yeah, the over-under from Vegas on that.
17.5.
Ooh.
Is that high?
That is rich.
Okay, 12.5. Sorry, 12.5.
12.5 for Jaden Ivey.
Is that what it is exactly?
Yes.
Mark, where's your ding? Come on.
Well, I was going to say 12.5, and then you double dipped on your
Didn't you
guesses
guess 17.5
Yeah,
first?
I know. But I nailed it.
I revised it immediately and got it exactly. Come on.
Paulo Banchero at 17.5, the tops of all the rookies.
How about
there.
Jabari Smith, 15.5?
Jabari 16, Chet 13.5, and Keegan Murray 13.5 as well.
Seems low for Keegan Murray, doesn't
Mathurin?
They only listed the first 5 picks. I am interested to see, we'll see how the next, handful of years evolve, but do you think there is a bit of a, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Tyrese Haliburton, Benedict Mathurin type of rivalry that could develop in the Central Division?
That's a good question.
I mean, both these teams are probably a ways away from being...
Here's the thing. Does Jaden Ivey become we'll start with Ivey. Does Ivey become a mainline scorer for Detroit, or is he like option 2 or 3 for them?
I mean, I think over time, certainly a mainline guy. I guess a lot depends on what they do here. But, I mean, Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, I mean, who else do they even have? They traded away Jeremy Grant. Carson Edwards going to come off the bench and give him something?
Carson Edwards actually looked fairly competent when I watched him. I mean, That's not to say he never has been. I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Mathurin has the 6th best Rookie of the Year odds, Mark, 12-1.
Well, he's the 6th pick. That makes sense, right?
Jaden Ivey has the 5th pick, had the 4th best Rookie of the Year.
So he has above what? Keegan Murray?
Odds.
Yeah, nobody wins any awards in Sacramento, right?
Well, if you're going to win one, Rookie of the Year is probably the only one that you're going to win out there in Sacramento, right?
Yeah, I mean,
we're starting to rebuild again here, and here we are building around a rookie. All right, Chad Buchanan, Pacers GM, going to join us in 15 minutes, so we're going to bump up the pop quiz a little bit. We'll do that here. Open up the phone lines, 317-239-1070. So again, pop quiz time right now, and let's do a morning check down as we lead into the pop quiz.
The Morning Checkdown. Brought to you by QC Kinetics, relieving your joint pain at QCkinetics.com on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Major League Baseball last night, St. Louis over Miami, 9-0. It was Washington over the Pirates, 3-2. Dodgers blanked by the Rockies, 4-0. No real games of note in the American League either. Angels over the White Sox, 4-3. Yankees over the A's, 9-5. And like half of Seattle's been suspended, right?
Yeah. Guardians got smoked by the Twins. Good big Guardians fan Scotty Hunt did want me to point out. Guardians. Mark, you're on the air. Guardians had a great month of June prior to that. Yeah, 12 guys, Jake, suspended. Angels.
Have you ever
Mariners.
noticed that our 9 o'clock hour goes completely off the rails? Is it because we just then suddenly we start waking up, or is the fatigue kicking in, or is it because Scotty walks in and we get nervous?
Well, I probably the middle of those three. Yeah, I think it's hard to sustain. Not that the 7 o'clock hour is at the level that it should be, but.
So basically, we give you, of the 3 hours that we're on the radio, we can guarantee you 1 hour is going to be decent.
And that's why we encourage people.
I wouldn't be throwing guarantees around.
That's why we encourage people to go to the podcast. You know, there is a best of on the podcast.
Oh, it's better of. We don't have a best of
daily
anything.
Basis. Not a lot of best of for the Fever this year, Jake, as expected. They lose last night to the Phoenix Mercury, 83-71.
Say that again. The Phoenix what?
5-15 on the year.
Is it
Mercury?
Mercury.
Say it again, Kevin.
Mercury.
Do you go Mercury or Mercury?
Mercury.
I go with Mercury. Did you go with Mercury?
Mercury.
Okay, you said it. I believe you're altering. Are we influencing?
Phoenix Mercury. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, Mercury. I think that's right. Now, Mercury's bad for you, right? You can't.
I wouldn't be drinking it, no.
You wouldn't do a shot of Mercury?
No. Someone says, here's some Mercury. Like, I'll take the absinthe, I think.
The Colts will release their training camp schedule tomorrow afternoon. We mentioned it earlier. The report day for training camp, July 26th there. Their first practice is the 27th. At least that is the assumption on that front. Again, free and open to the public there for the Colts training camp.
What other thing do we have to get to? That's everything,
You want
isn't
to do
it?
the pop quiz?
Pop quiz time. It is. Mark, phone lines look to be crowded to me.
They are. Let's get the sponsor.
Really?
Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
Beautiful segue.
Do we have callers lined up, Mark?
We have jammed lines.
Do we really?
Mm-hmm. That's the essence of the pop quiz. I'm sure some people will call it 9:30. I'm here for the pop quiz. Sorry.
Kevin, are you picking the number this morning?
Sure. Let's do 4.
4.
Steve,
what's up?
Not too much, Jake. Kevin, how's those tomato plants doing?
They look beautiful, Steve. Thank you for that update there. It's Rosie's highlight of the day, taking a look at them.
Well, great. I'm ready to fail miserably in a pop quiz.
Steve, no, you always kind of act like you aren't,
You're a ringer, Steve.
Yeah, you know full well what you're doing here, Steve. Smartest kid in the class and acts like he's dumb.
This isn't overly difficult, I don't think, either.
Spring butt of the class.
We gave one of the answers earlier, and another one is a name that's recently been on the pop quiz. Steve, would you like for me...
all the names are super relevant.
Yeah, that's true. Would you like for me, that would be Jake, to lead you off with questions 1, 3, and 5, or are you going to go with the odd numbers coming from Kevin Bowen?
I have no preference.
Oh, really? Kevin, which one would you like?
You can lead off. We can stick with what we usually do.
Okay, here we go. Question number 1 for you, Steve. On this day in 1993, the Chicago White Sox released 45-year-old Carlton Fisk. At the time, Fisk, who became a Hall of Famer, held Major League records for most home runs by a catcher and most games caught. Both records have since been surpassed. Who broke Carlton Fisk's record for most home runs by a catcher? Was it Gary Carter, Ivan Rodriguez, Benito Santiago, or Mike Piazza?
Gary Carter.
Okay.
All right, number 2, who broke Fisk's record for the most Major League games caught? Gary Carter, Pudge Rodriguez, Yadier Molina, or Jason Kendall?
Gary Carter.
You're a big fan of Gary Carter, it would appear, right?
Always go with the first answer in the series.
Okay. Fair enough. Don't do that on the next question, though.
Probably won't be a fan after this quiz.
Yesterday, this player became the first in tennis history, male or female, to win 80 or more matches in all 4 Grand Slam tournaments, with career victory number 80 at Wimbledon. Was it Roger Federer, Serena Williams, Novak Djokovic, or Rafael Nadal?
Rafael Nadal.
Okay.
I kind of struggled yesterday, right? The winner?
Not unlike this quiz. Okay, go
Former
ahead.
NFL running backs, Adrian Peters. Steve, were you listening around 8:15 this morning?
It would be the former Colts, Frank Gore.
Look at that.
Way to go, Kev.
Wow.
Tell you what, Steve swung and missed pretty hard
Didn't
on the
even
first
know the
3.
question.
But man, Frank Gore, he was all over there. Yeah, he knocked out a guy by the name of Yaya Olarunsola.
Okay. Yaya? That's my mom's name for my mom. My nieces and nephew call my mom Yaya. That's like Greek for grandmother.
Well, better that than that last name.
True. Russian for tomato can.
Am I saying that right, Scotty? Olarunsola?
Sure. Question number 5 for you, Steve. 35 years ago today, Don Baylor set the painful record, one of my favorite records, actually. He was hit by a pitch for the 244th time in his career. That is a major league record, but he would finish his career with 267 hit by pitches, and that has since been broken. Who holds the major league record now for being hit by a pitch the most times? Is it Craig Biggio, Chase Utley, Alex Rodriguez, or Jason Giambi?
Jason Giambi.
Are you positive?
No.
What if I told you that the only thing more painful than being hit by pitch is being stung by a killer bee? It'd be Craig Biggio, Chase Utley, Alex Rodriguez, or Jason Giambi?
The first guy.
Okay.
Not a normal Steve performance here. I'm used to. I hold Steve to a very high standard. A great individual, but yeah, I thought it was. I thought he'd do a little bit better than he did. All right, number 1, the White Sox released 45-year-old Carlton Fisk on this day in 1993. At the time, the future Hall of Famer had the most home runs by a catcher and most games caught. Both records have since been surpassed. Who broke Fisk's record for most homers by a catcher?
That would be Mike Piazza, which was option D.
You blew it! Gary Carter was the guess there.
You don't get to come back tomorrow. You don't even get a lousy copy of our home game. You're a complete loser.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Pudge Rodriguez was the question, the answer to question number 2 for most games caught. Yadier Molina, one would think, has got to be close to that. Not going to make it, Scotty said. Djokovic was the correct answer for number 3, Frank Gore for number 4, and Craig Biggio, part of the Killer Bees of the Houston Astros, was the correct answer for question number 5. So
Djokovic lose a set yesterday, Scotty? Yeah, he did.
Did he?
It's pretty rare for him, especially that early in the tournament. Wimbledon underway. So a nice breakfast at Wimbledon for the next couple of weeks.
Well, it'd be lunch over there now, right?
Yeah, breakfast for us. But look, everybody on the lawn out there. This looks like a great environment.
Well, the lawn's what they play on.
At Wimbledon. All right, we come back. Chad Buchanan, Pacers GM, is going to join us. We'll talk draft, look ahead to free agency as well with him. We'll do that next. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Tavern Tour 22, brought to you by Evan Williams, continues Thursday 3 to 6 with JMV at the Checkered Flag Tavern on the west side on Morris Street off Washington Street and 465. Tavern Tour 22.
Dan Dockich's annual Tom Dockich Memorial Golf Outing presented by Franciscan Health is on the schedule and set for July 18th. Go to 1075thefan.com/events for details and tickets.
At Family Dollar, we know you want more for your summer. Find everything from grilling supplies and beach toys to deals on your favorite soft drinks. Family Dollar, helping you do more.
Hey, tennis fans, with the BetRivers.com sportsbook app, you can smash, slice, and spin your way to big tennis paydays. That's because we're serving up the excitement of live in-game betting, where you can bet on all the action, including point-by-point betting from tournaments around the world. Plus, with BetRivers' award-winning customer service, it's game, set, and match. Download the BetRivers.com sportsbook app. It's a whole new game.
Must be 21. Must be located in Indiana. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. 1-800-994-8448.
Hey, JMV and fellas, need an annual health exam? I recommend going to Low T Center to get your complete health assessment. They will check all of your levels, not just your T level. In most cases, it's completely covered by your health insurance, and if you don't have insurance, it's less than $100 for a full lab panel and an office visit with their medical provider to give you a complete health assessment. Low T Center specializes in men's health care. Go to lowtcenter.com now to book online. That's Low T Center, reinventing men's health care.
2022 NBA Draft. The Pacers will really have a new look now.
The Indiana Pacers now on the clock.
With the 6th pick, the Indiana Pacers select Benedict Mathurin.
Giving it up. Oh! And the hammer from Mathurin.
What happens next?
Benedict Mathurin.
Happens here.
I love his style of play and what he can bring.
Your home for Pacers basketball. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
In a pretty cabinet, Anthony Case, she says, just like Marie Antoinette.
You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I noticed that Mark Dykton's been going with the theme of the question I asked last night, which is, among bands with a single word title, what is the greatest band? And it seems as though Queen is the most common answer. And again, I didn't realize Eagles is just Eagles. I always, for my whole life, I was literally this many days old less one when I found out it's not the Eagles.
See, and then I saw that and it said, I looked up like best one name bands and said the Eagles. So it was still listed as the Eagles. So I don't know.
It's just, if you look at the album, it just says Eagles.
Well,
what is the college mascot of Simpson College? Are they the Eagles? Do we know?
Tigers.
Tigers? Is that your guess? Mark, you got a guess?
No idea. I'll say the Eagles.
Well, we can find out, right? The Pride of Simpson joins us now on the Payless Liquors guest line. He also happens to be the general manager at the Indiana Pacers. Chad Buchanan joins us on the program. Hi, Chad. How are you?
I'm good. It's the Simpson Storm, baby.
The Storm?
Ooh, I like that.
Is that a snowstorm or a rainstorm?
I'm not even sure what kind of weather pattern it is. But we were the Redmen and we changed to the Storm, just like St. John's University did.
Well, now, are you a native of Simpson's in Iowa, right?
Correct.
Are you
in Indianola, Iowa?
Are you a native Iowan?
I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. Yep, I sure am.
So would you agree that Maid-Rite sandwiches are pretty much the greatest thing ever?
The best, the absolute best. The Iowa State Fair, Maid-Rite sandwiches, that's what summer was about for me growing up.
There we go. Okay, let's begin with this. So the summer is here for the Pacers, and we have lots of questions about the roster. But let's start kind of going with the most recent first, and that is, tell me about what it was with Benedict Mathurin that seemingly you guys just kept going back to. It seemed like he was the prospect from the beginning that you'd zeroed in on.
I think you're absolutely right on that, Jake. We, early on in the process, identified, we have a lot of needs. I mean, we win 25 games, let's be real. We have a lot of needs. And one of the things that we felt was an imperative for us to add is some competitive juice, some toughness, some grit, some confidence and fearlessness. And I think Ben exhibits all those traits, and he's a player who's far from his finished form. He made a big jump from his freshman to sophomore year, which for us is an indicator of a guy who likes to work, and he proved that, in the short time we got to know him during the draft process. You probably heard on his draft workout, he came back for a second round of in the gym, which, for us is a great indicator of a guy who just loves the game. And I think in this business, guys who succeed and hit their ceiling love the game. They love to watch it. They love to be in the gym working on it. They love to be in the weight room. Anything they can do to improve their game. And I think Ben showed to us that he had all those traits, and I think he's a great fit with what we already have in the locker room with a couple of young players that we're trying to build with, and I think he complements everything we have in place already.
Chad Buchanan's with us again, Pacers general manager. And Chad, throughout the draft process, I was a huge fan of Benedict Mathurin, and at times Jake was a little worried about how big of a crush I had on him for Benedict's safety. When you look at him, athleticism and shooting-wise, obviously those stand out. It almost seems like the biggest draw when I hear you guys talk about him, though, is what he does bring off the floor and just kind of how he's wired.
Yes, and I think the one thing that this locker room really lacked the past couple of years is we have some great guys in our locker room, high character, who are a little afraid to maybe step on each other's toes and maybe say something that probably would maybe offend somebody initially, but be good for the team in the long run. And I think Ben's probably not going to be able to do that right away. That's tough for a rookie to come in and fill that role. But I think in the long term, the more he gets settled and comfortable and proves himself as a player, I think we're going to see he's not afraid to have an uncomfortable conversation or say something that might, step on somebody else's toes, but it might be something that need to be said. And I think that's in talking with the Arizona staff and listening to Ben talking to his teammates, that's who he is. He's a competitive player at heart, and he wants to win, and he's going to do and say whatever it takes to try and help the team win.
Chad, are you actively shopping Malcolm Brogdon?
I would say I hear a lot of things out there about Malcolm. First of all, I think Malcolm is a tremendous player. I know he's gone through some, health injuries that has kept him, off the floor more than I think he'd like to be on it, and we'd like him to see him out there. But I think with our job, when you've won 25 games, like I mentioned earlier, we have to look at everything we can to help set us up to be better in the long run. And, there's really opportunities out there that if they present themselves, we have to consider. But I think at the core, Malcolm is a great player, and we signed him because he was a great player, and he's done a lot of really good things for us. And, I think we're going to always be opportunistic if the opportunity presents itself, moving forward. But at the end of the day, we like him on this team. I think he does some things that really complement the guys that we have, can help some of the young players on our team, and we'll see where it goes between now and the start of the season.
At what point did you, or take me through the process, Chad Buchanan, general manager of the Pacers, of when you kind of realized that you had to put a boulder in the stream and redirect the way you were being built? In other words, like I have said, and you tell me if this is inaccurate, this feels more like a rebuild than a retool. Was there a definitive moment that you, Kevin Pritchard, Rick Carlisle, said to yourselves, we've got to go in a totally different direction here?
I would say I've talked with Kevin about this quite a bit. As I look back on last season and just kind of the last, makeup of this group that we've had before we made some of these changes, it was obviously hard for us to get everybody healthy, which was really discouraging, I think, for everybody. And then we were losing a lot of close games. We had a tough schedule. And if you think back, we played Chicago at home, I believe it was on New Year's Eve. And DeMar DeRozan hits a one-legged running three-point shot at the buzzer. I felt like that moment was like the night or the day, the afternoon game. I felt that was the moment where that was the dagger in this group. I just felt like that really amplified that we needed to start to consider to go in a different direction with this group. And this team, when it was healthy, was a very good team. Now, it probably wasn't a championship team. We're realistic about that, but it was a very good team that maybe with a supplementary move could have gotten us over the hump and be a potential contender. But we were just so far away with this group, and it kind of rode it as far as we felt we could. And the writing was on the wall. There was time to go in a different direction. And, we've got a great owner who's supporting this, and it's going to take some time. I mean, you look at the Eastern Conference, it's very tough from top to bottom. It's not like it was 5 or 6 years ago. And, we've got a lot of work to do. The draft is a good start, but there's still a lot of work for us to do to get back to being a contender. And we want to have a good young core of players that we want to build with, and we feel like we're putting those pieces in place, but there's still more work to be done.
Pacers GM Chad Buchanan, he's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Chad, as you look at Myles Turner heading into a contract year, ideally, would you guys sign him to an extension before the start of this coming season?
I mean, he's in position to have a tremendous season. We feel like for us, just him and Domas playing together was good at times. It was challenging at times for both players. Now that we've cleared that up, he's got a runway here to be our starting center. He's playing with probably the best pass-first point guard he's played with in a long time, in Tyrese. And he's got a coach who believes in him, and it's a great opportunity for having a big year. We'd love to, see him with us long term. Whether that plays out or not, that's kind of in his hands a little bit as well. But he's given everything he can to this organization over the last 7 years, and he's a big part of, this organization, who we are and what we stand for. And we'll see where things go. It's hard for me to predict where things are going to go in this league. Things change from, season to season and almost month to month. But we could not be happy with what Myles has done for this organization over the last 7 years, and hope that this continues for a long time to come.
Chad, I think back to last year around the draft, and when you guys took Isaiah Jackson, I'll never forget Rick Carlisle, a guy who seems pretty mild-mannered, pretty even-keeled to me, just gushing over the workout with Isaiah Jackson and just kind of molding him out of clay and so much potential. I feel like we saw that in his first season in the NBA. With how the game has evolved at this level, do you think Isaiah Jackson's a guy, and honestly, you saw it probably from the Final Four teams in the playoffs, that could be kind of a starting five, a starting center at some point in his career?
I do. I believe he definitely has starter potential, and you're spot on about Coach Carlisle. He was ecstatic when we were able to land Isaiah, and I think Isaiah has a chance to go in a lot of different directions. He could, if his body continues to get stronger and he learns the game, and he's obviously a very foul-prone player right now, which a lot of young, aggressive players tend to be. He's learning how to curb some of that aggressiveness, but also not get away from what makes him so good, which is being a fearless guy who chases the ball, who attacks the rim on offense, he attacks the glass on both ends of the floor. And I see the sky's the limit for Isaiah, and he's shown this offseason to be very hungry to get better. I think he got a taste of some success and wants more of it, and that's a great trait to have in a young player, and we have very, very high hopes for Isaiah.
So you kind of answered this, Chad, but I'm going to be more direct, so I apologize for that. Are you actively shopping Myles Turner?
We are not actively shopping Myles Turner. We are, at this point in our off-season process, we are listening to, other teams that contact us, but, we are in no hurry to massively, alter this roster. We're trying to do things in an order that allows us to give us a chance to be better down the road. And, teams talk, with each other this time of year, and there's conversations that are had, but, we're more of a listening type of organization than we are trying to, make drastic changes. I think that's where you make mistakes.
So I look at, when I look at this roster, and I'm kind of bullish on it, to be honest with you, because I think there are good young pieces, and I'm intrigued by that. And one of those pieces, Chad, to be honest with you, is Jalen Smith. And I know that there's the weird, for those listening that are unfamiliar, when you acquired Jalen Smith from Phoenix, there was this weird quirk where because of the way he was acquired, you guys are limited in the amount that you could pay him in free agency versus the rest of the league, which leads to this question. Could you have a prearranged agreement with another franchise that if they were to sign Jalen Smith under the contract that you would be handcuffed from signing, that you would then trade a piece that you currently have in exchange and bring him right back? Is that something that is allowed? Is that a loophole that's allowed within the NBA?
Well, I got to be a little careful talking too much about free agency because we're not really permitted to talk too many specifics as we head into later this week. But there are rules that prohibit us, like you mentioned, from retaining a player in his situation. So what you've kind of laid out there, I can't comment too much on it, unfortunately, Jake. What I will say is we were extremely happy with what we saw from Jalen. We call him Sticks, from Sticks this year, and a tremendous young player who's got a lot of high character, and it's a situation that we'll have to deal with moving forward, but I just can't get into too many specifics on that one, Jake. I'm sorry.
No, I understand. So let me rephrase it, I guess, for my own, because I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, clearly. Is it true that in the NBA that if a player, so generically speaking, if a player leaves one franchise, is there an amount of time that they have to be away from that franchise before they can be reacquired?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
There is.
That's a clearer way of saying it, I guess.
Do you get, and again, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but do you get any vibe from Jalen Smith's camp on what they're thinking? Because, in my opinion, you guys can just provide an opportunity that I don't think a lot of other teams can, and that has to be attractive to them when they think long term.
Yeah, that's another one. I can't get too in depth on that. I would just say when we finished up the season, I think Jalen knows how much we value him, and we're happy with what he did with us and how he fits with us. But ultimately, this week, he's going to have opportunities, I'm sure, and we've got to, do our best to build this team with young players that we want to build around, and we'll see where it goes this week.
He's Chad Buchanan, again, Pacers general manager, and is with us here. It is a busy week for the NBA. Free agency, 6 o'clock on Thursday. Summer League starts next week. Chad, I remember, I guess it was a couple years ago now, when you guys drafted Cassius Stanley. I think you met with us after that draft pick and mentioned how, getting more athletic was a clear focus for you in the draft. We heard that again on Thursday night. Getting more athletic. When you look at kind of the skill set in general of your roster right now, outside of athleticism, what do you like and what do you feel like you need to add to from that standpoint?
Yeah, we got a lot, like I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of holes to fill, and it's going to be hard to fill it all at once. But when I look at what is on our roster currently, I think we have a great young core of backcourt players. And we've got some young players and also Myles in his prime at the center position that we're excited about. And I think today's modern NBA game is about guys who can handle the ball, make plays. Obviously, shooting's a big component of it. I feel like we got a little bit of all of that right now. Now we have some holes at the small forward, at the power forward position right now that we're going to have to address, whether it's now or in the near future. But I really like, where the NBA is at today. Like I mentioned, it's about versatility, guys that can do a lot of different things with the ball. And I feel like we have a lot of young players that, can check a lot of those boxes for us. And it's just going to be a matter of getting them some experience, getting them some chemistry playing together. We've had a couple of weeks here of voluntary workouts where we've had a great turnout of pretty much every young guy on our roster, and including TJ McConnell, who've been in the gym working out together. The energy is great. We're building chemistry this off season. Summer League will be another chance for our young guys to build some chemistry together. And I just like the vibe around our team right now. And I think coming off such a tough season, you never know what the mental approach and makeup is going to be of your team, but it's been phenomenal. And we've just got a lot of young, hungry players who want to get better, and they love being around each other, and they love working together. And our coaches have done a great job of helping build our culture into a player development, focused mindset.
It's funny. When I watch TJ McConnell, Chad, Wayne Gretzky is the one. It's been, this quote has been said a million times about Wayne Gretzky, that when Gretzky was a young player, somebody asked him about, all of his assists, and he said, it's because I don't look where the puck is, I look where the puck is going. And TJ McConnell reminds me of that on a basketball court. This is going to sound weird, but is there any player in the league that better understands angles than TJ McConnell, or is that the weirdest, dumbest statement you've ever heard in your life?
You don't give yourself enough credit, Jake. I know. I see you at games. I know you understand basketball. I think you're spot on with that, and I'm going to let TJ know that he was compared to Wayne Gretzky this morning.
That's right. That's right.
But no, I think you're spot on. TJ has a phenomenal basketball IQ. His vision of what is happening on the floor. Great players not only know what their teammates are doing, but they know what the other 5 defenders on the floor are doing. They know where all 9 guys on the floor are at all times, and I think that is a great way to describe TJ. That's why his teammates love playing with him, because they know if they move, if they're open, he's going to deliver them the ball on time and on target. TJ is just he's going to be a coach, he's going to be a GM, he's going to be a president, whatever he wants to be when he's done playing, because of his understanding, like you said, of the nuances of the game, angles, time, score, what his opponent is trying to do, is just the best I've ever seen from an NBA player that I've been around. So you were spot on with that about
Well,
TJ.
It's interesting because I feel like when he was acquired, perhaps it was almost in an early coaching type situation. And then the more he got on the floor, the more he almost created, I guess it's a good problem to have, a log jam in the backcourt because it was kind of difficult to keep him off the floor because it just seemed like from the pluses and minuses that more pluses than minuses happened when he was on the floor. And I don't mean to oversell TJ McConnell, but do people maybe overlook the contributions that he gives?
I do. It's easy to look at TJ and see what he isn't. He doesn't look the part of a very, very good NBA point guard.
Yeah, he looks like a middle school math teacher.
He sure does. He gives my son hope. I know that. My son's a 6-foot point guard too. So I've said don't be watching Victor Oladipo and all these guys. You need to be watching TJ McConnell. That's the guy you need to be watching. But when we signed TJ, the intention was for him to be our third point guard. We had Aaron Holiday at the time, who was a young developing point guard that we had a lot of high hopes for. We bring in TJ, and just every day in training camp and every day he was around, you realize it's going to be impossible to keep him off the floor. The things he does to organize your team, to make plays for others, he pushes the ball, he's a pest on defense, he's a vocal leader. There's so many traits of TJ that you look for in a point guard, and there's obviously some things he doesn't possess. He's not Ja Morant, he's not Russell Westbrook from an athletic standpoint, but there's lots of things that you do on the floor where you're not in the air that are important from the point guard position, and we love having TJ. He's one of our all-time favorites that we've had around this building, and I think we hope to keep him as a pacer, whether it be as a player or a coach or taking my spot one day, whatever it might be. We hope he's with us for a long, long time.
Chad, where's Myles at from a health standpoint? I think anytime you see foot injuries over the past 2 years for a big guy like him, it's a bit of a caution flag thrown up there, not to mention the extension potential coming up as well. So where is he at health-wise?
He's 100% healthy right now. He's doing a lot of training. He has a home down in Texas in the off-season he likes to spend time at, but he also travels a little bit. Very focused on having a big year this year. As you mentioned, it's a contract year for him, so I think he wants to play well. He knows there's a great opportunity in front of him right now with our team. And at the end of last year, we were a little overcautious with how soon we wanted to bring him back with where our season was going. We didn't want to put him in danger. If he was at 80%, there's no need to put him out there on the floor and risk further injury. But he's 100% healthy right now and raring to go for this season.
Draft picks good to play in Summer League?
We'll work through the contracts with all three, but hopeful that all three of them will be on the floor for us, and excited for how those three will look and play together. I think Andrew Nebhard will do a great job of running our team in Summer League and hopefully make all those guys, not only our draft picks, but the rest of our young players look good out there in Las Vegas.
Chad Buchanan is our guest. He's the general manager of the Pacers. He's on the Payless Liquors guest line. Chad, you were born 10 days after I was, so I'm curious. That means basically we're the same age. The first Final Four and the first NBA Finals that you remember watching?
Oh, gosh, great question. I think the first Final Four, ironically, I'm not saying this because I live here, was when Isaiah Thomas led Indiana to the national championship. Okay. I remember watching that. I think it was 1980, I believe.
81, yep.
81, yeah, because, I was, being from Iowa, I watched Iowa basketball games and Iowa State basketball games growing up, and my dream growing up was to play for Bobby Knight. When I was in 7th grade, I went to one of his camps, and as I got his autograph at the end of camp, I said, Coach Knight, I'm going to play for you one day, and so I've always remembered that. Indiana basketball was something for me, even though I was from Iowa, that I just always admired from a distance, and that national championship run was the first one I remember. And as far as the NBA Finals, it would have been one of the Lakers-Celtics series. I think for me, maybe I don't remember what year it was when Magic made the running skyhook over the lane at Boston.
Yeah, that was 87. I remember. I can remember the 83. Do you remember when Dr. J and Moses Malone? That would probably be my first one.
Yes, Maurice Cheeks, Andrew Toney. You're right.
Yeah, Andrew Toney was big, man. You got to have those guys off the bench, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, have you got your colonoscopy scheduled yet, Jake?
Chad, I'm not going to lie to you.
We're just covering all the bases here.
Here's the thing. I've had the colonoscopy before thanks to diverticulitis, but once you get a wire going through the heart, then a wire going through the colon, you're like, no, I'm good. I'm cool.
That's nothing. You're right.
We're closing in on it, though. 50's coming up quickly.
You didn't expect to be talking about that with me today, I'm sure.
Hey, I appreciate it. Trust me.
Some might say last year at times, Chad, not to be rude, but watching the Pacers last year kind of felt like at times having one of those. Hopefully not that way this year. Last one for me on that front. When you look at Tyrese Haliburton, I think a lot of people saw the image of him and Benedict Mathurin in the hotel room together the night before the draft. They feel like, okay, this is the leader right now. How much do you want Tyrese to kind of take a stranglehold of that leadership, of being that dominant voice for you guys this coming season?
We absolutely encourage that from Tyrese. I think, as you guys probably know, Tyrese is a basketball junkie. He watches a ton of basketball. He loves to play the game, obviously, but he's very invested in what's going on in the basketball community and the basketball industry. He was very vocal during the season on what he felt like our team needed moving forward. We encouraged him to be around for our draft workouts, which he and several of our other players were around as well. Chris Duarte, Isaiah, TJ McConnell, those guys were all around for a lot of our draft workouts. And we like to pick our players' brain, not just Tyrese, but like I mentioned, TJ's got a great basketball mind. Isaiah and Chris, really know our team. So, but, Tyrese was very vocal from the very beginning how much he liked Ben and his fit with our team, his fit next to him individually, what our team was really needing from a personality standpoint. He made it clear to us that if he was picking and Ben was available, that's his guy. And obviously we're going to listen, to our players, but obviously we got to do what's right for the team. But Tyrese was all in on Ben from day one.
By the way, Chad, I'll leave you with this. Downtown, obviously, where Market Square Arena, where the Pacers played, there's still, I think there's the placard that says that on this mark was Elvis Presley's final concert, which the 45-year anniversary of that was just a couple of days ago. You could actually go, if you'd like, and pour one out for your homies. That was also the site of the most recent Iowa Final Four trip in 1980, right there at Market Square Arena. See, you could walk right out and pay tribute. Lute Olson and the boys.
I remember the Hawkeyes that year, too. I remember them, Vince, Ronnie Lester, Steve Krasselson, Steve Waite, a bunch of those guys that I know today now, ironically. I remember that team vividly.
My understanding is they lost that game too many Maid-Rites night before, right? That's what did them in.
Pre-game meal was the wrong choice.
No Maid-Rites the night before the colonoscopy, Kevin. Just remember this when you're about to turn 50.
I thought you were going to say the Simpsons Storm were getting on a run at Market Square Arena in some tournament back.
We just don't know what meteorological storm it was.
Chad, I know it's a crazy time for you guys, so thanks for making a little bit of time for us this morning. Good luck with free agency coming up, and safe travels out to Vegas for Summer League.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
Chad Buchanan right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Really appreciate his time. That will be up on the podcast. Pretty good podcast today. A little bit of Indy 11 Stadium talk and Chad Buchanan as well.
And I'll be honest with you. I mean, open disclaimer, I don't know Chad. I didn't want people to think like, oh, man, you guys are buddies. I mean, I don't know him. Nice guy. And again, and obviously the colonoscopy, what he's referencing is you need to get that checked before you're 50. And so I probably should go ahead and have one of those.
But Chad's always had great.
Make that a show bit, I think.
What's that?
Make that a show bit.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
For all of our sake, thank you for that. I think Chad's always had pretty good candor, Jake, even though he's not necessarily the one making the final call. Kevin Pritchard, would be above him on a hierarchy standpoint.
However, if I was to dissect that, and I'm a classic overthinker, if I was to dissect that, when I asked, are you shopping Myles Turner, he definitively said, we are not. When I asked, are you shopping Malcolm Brogdon, he said, Malcolm's a really good guy.
Yeah, Brogdon's gone. I mean, point blank.
Clearly they're shopping Malcolm Brogdon.
Said it last week, and I'll say it again. It would stun me if Malcolm Brogdon's on this team opening night. And yes, they are not actively shopping Myles Turner. I think there is intrigue to look and see what him and Tyrese Haliburton can do together, but I think he also mentioned they are listening. And I think Myles Turner is coveted around the league to a degree. So I think, if I had to make a bet right now on June 28th, Jake, Myles Turner's the starting center and Malcolm Brogdon's not on this team next year.
I think, it certainly sounds that way, right? And I listen.
The extension thing worries me with Turner, though.
Brogdon is,
Turner has a good year and then he walks.
I think what you do with Turner, to be honest with you, is you see what you have out of him and how people play off of him. And If it looks like you can't live without him, then you try to sign him. And if not, then you, at the deadline, trade him for somebody that wants him as a rental to free up. You know what I mean?
I just worry about the foot injury comes back up. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit too.
Here's the thing I'll say about Myles Turner. And Malcolm Brogdon to a great extent, but Myles Turner notably because he's been here longer. Myles Turner, I think, gets a little bit of a bum rap because when he was drafted, partially where he was, he was drafted high, but we were so thirsty coming off of the Paul George defection for somebody, immediately he was going to be the guy. And I mean, obviously then Oladipo became his team, but immediately people thought, we're just immediately just handed over to Myles Turner.
Well, Larry didn't help the situation with his comments.
But he has been nothing but, for the most part here, a good citizen. He's been involved in the community. He's a nice guy. He's done what's been asked. And I don't know that his job description has ever been clarified. It changes week to week in terms of what's been asked of him, and I think that he's done a nice job of actively pursuing and being what it is that they have asked.
Young core of backcourt guys, but a small forward and power forward. Those are the spots to address there moving forward. Chad Buchanan, really good stuff with him on that.
It's a pretty good show today.
That was great. Really enjoyed the Mickey Shuey conversation.
Thought I didn't work here.
There. We will talk a little bit more, I think, Pacers free agency-wise, coming up tomorrow. Again, 6 o'clock Thursday. We'll talk to you 7 a.m. tomorrow.
Response